All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Select Board and Wage and Personnel Board meeting of Monday, March 31st, 5:45 p.m. LakeCAM is recording. Is there anybody else here recording the meeting? No? Okay, and we are here at the Lakeville Police Station. Okay, so if we could please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you. And happy March 31st, end of first quarter, getting into April mañana. Whew. So I have a few select board announcements, so bear with me here. All right, the town will be holding its annual rabies clinic on April 5th at the DPW barn. The cost is $10. Dogs will be vaccinated from 1 to 3 p.m. and must be on leashes. Cats will be vaccinated from 3 to 3:30 and must be in carriers. The town clerk's office will be present to issue dog licenses for an additional fee. And please make sure your dog or cat is at least 3 months old to receive a vaccination. The animal shelter will also be open for adoptions. All right, so that's on April 5th. Our town's annual election will take place on Monday, April 7th from 12 to 8 p.m. at the Loon Pond Lodge at Ted Williams Camp. On April 19th, at 10 a.m., the Lakeville Lions will be holding their annual Easter egg hunt at their clubhouse at 170 Main Street, and the public is invited to attend. Our annual town meeting will be held on June 9th at 7 p.m. at Apponequet High School. And on March 28th, the Lakeville Council on Aging celebrated its very first digital literacy graduation ceremony. The digital literacy program started as a dream of our director, and it came to fruition with a $10,000 grant awarded from Senator Michael Rodrigues. This is from the Empowerment Fund through the South Coast Community Foundation in 2023. And with this grant and the assistance of Bob McNally, our IT professional, the COA was able to purchase and set up 6 laptops to use for this literacy class. Let's see here. On Friday, they recognized the first course of graduates, and they each received a completion certificate signed by the COA director, the instructor Jennifer Shallcross, and Senator Mike Rodrigues. Also present, Representative Oral, Town Administrator Andrew Sukforth, Select Board, myself, and Member Leah Fabian. And we thank them all for this wonderful little ceremony, and they will be scheduling part 2, and I believe the class will just roll into that. And when talking with the COA director, I had asked if they would be holding the first session again, and I believe they're going to try to work that in. But it was very successful, and the seniors were pretty, I guess they're pretty impressed with the fact that they were able to learn something new, especially when it came down to the security of their systems. Okay, moving on, our Lakeville Police Department has established a tip line via telephone and email, and the department encourages anyone with information regarding criminal or suspicious activities to reach out. The department has committed to thoroughly investigating all citizen tips within the community. Tips can be sent anonymously if preferred. So if you do see something, you can email tips@lakevillema.org or call 508-946-8815. Chief Perkins would like to mention that the tip line is not monitored 24/7, and it is for non-emergencies. Emergency crimes Emergencies, crimes in progress, or suspicious activity in progress should be reported directly using 911, or you can call the other line at 508-947-4422. All right, artwork created by students at the Freetown Lakeville Middle School will be on display March 29th through April 3rd at the Great Ponds Gallery at the Lakeville Public Library during the opening hours. So if you're in the library, just take a stroll through and check out their work. It's pretty impressive. We do have current committee commission vacancies, which include two members at large for the Economic Development Committee, and the deadline to apply for that would be April 10th. So if you can get those into our office. We are looking for 2 at-large members for the Communications Committee. We're looking for an associate member for the Zoning Board of Appeals, Board of Registrars member, 2 vacancies for the Cable TV Advisory Committee, and 1 vacancy for the Conservation Commission, and 1 vacancy for the Agricultural Commission. So as you know, we have our election on April 7th. So I think everybody's energized and ready for something new. So if you're interested, and I know you have been thinking about it, please submit your letter of interest. We'd love to have you on board. Also, there are some elected positions that no one pulled papers for. 3 spots on the Park Commission and 1 spot on the Finance Committee. So if you are interested in writing or running a write-in candidate, please contact the town clerk via email and just let her know that you're thinking of running a write-in campaign. And lastly, I have a fun fact. For years, the Board of Selectmen wore many hats, and acting as selectmen, the Board of Health, Assessors, and Welfare. And in 1968, the state took over the welfare office. The selectmen decided that the assessors needed to be its own board, so members agreed that when their terms expired, they would run for either selectman or assessor. And in 1973, Abraham Van Linton was the first member elected as an assessor, and Richard Fickert was the first member elected as a selectman. The complete separation of the 2 boards occurred in 1975, and the Board of Selectmen continued to act as the Board of Health per Mass General Law. And as you know, today, we do not act as the Board of Health. Put them there. All right, that's enough for me. Anybody else from the Select Board have anything they'd like to add to the announcements?
Just want to say thank you to Brenna.
You're welcome.
Last day. Yeah, really appreciative of the time you spent with the board, and hopefully you think about running again.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a trip. No, seriously, it's been nice. It's been a good thing.
Lorraine, what'd you say? It's a blast.
It's a blast.
Yes, it's a blast.
And then what did you always say?
It's oddly rewarding.
Yeah, that one. No, it's been nice, and it's been nice to meet people and get out of the house a bit. I might come back. I might not, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenna. It's been nice having
Thank
you
you.
here. Agreed. Yep.
I tell you what, props to people who do it for a while, because I am tired.
We just drink a lot of coffee before we get to the meetings. Thought you were going to say drinks. All right, with that, I'd like to turn this over to our town administrator for their report. Andrew?
Thank you. Just a few quick updates. We posted the town planner position this past week. Recruitment efforts are ongoing. I met with Frank Moniz and Erica Correa to talk about credit cards at the transfer station. Our hope is to be totally cashless by this spring. Hopefully by the end of April. And then it's not part of the report, but it's something over the weekend. We've gotten quite a few complaints about noise on the trains. I think the board discussed this back in 2018 originally. I reached out to Gene Fox to kind of see what we could do. Obviously, it leads to the quiet zones, which is an expense. So the cost, we have to do, obviously the town would be responsible for the capital upgrade, which is in the ballpark of 1 to 2 million. We would take on the liability if those do not work or they're broken. We would take on the maintenance costs of if anything happens electronically, we gotta fix it ourselves.
And that's per crossing too, isn't it?
That's per crossing.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously 2 just over the line in Berkeley, so that would be, we could fix our issue and the noise could carry just a few hundred yards away. So obviously there's a huge federal railroad, component to it. It's really a federal issue, so Gene Fox did give me a contact of the federal agency if the board is inclined to pursue the quiet zone in the future, but
Clarification, quiet zone or silent crossing?
I think they kind of reference it as the same.
Okay, because
Kind of thing.
I thought they were two different things. I thought the quiet zone had a reduction, and then the quiet crossing meant no hitting the horn, but I know there was pushback on the silent crossing back in 2018, 2019 for safety reasons, you know, people getting hit by trains and all of that. But I got the same calls as everyone probably did in the last couple of days, and it's the same thing. It's not during the day that's the problem. It's the 1 in the morning, the 4:45. Those ones are really the most problematic. And people were saying they didn't necessarily want silence. They just didn't know why it had to be that loud as it is.
Yeah, there is, I think the first couple of weeks they kind of are doing a whole new route, obviously, and so I think they kind of lay on the horn more than they normally would, and they might quiet him down as they get used to everything, but it's no guarantee. I did find I think there's only one community in the Commonwealth that actually has more than one crossing, and that's Beverly, I believe.
I thought Hingham had them, no?
They do, I think just in one crossing. I think we have 3 in total, so.
I mean, I started reading those federal regulations, and like it says, like every time they have to blow the horn, they're actually blowing it 4 times. It's like too long, a short, and a long, or something along those lines. So I'm sure it could add up. But I don't know. I mean, I'd say let's live with it for a little while and see if it just becomes background noise, like a lot of this stuff can. But I don't live on the tracks, so it's affecting me differently.
Madam Chair, if I may. So, because I sit with the MBTA Advisory Board, I did reach out to Brian Kane, who runs the whole MBTA advisory thing. He and I are going to work with transitioning Andrew just, the advisory board is still represented by mostly elected folks, but still, where we have the train here now. I think it's a great contact for Andrew to have. Most of the time it's just been budget oversight, but now that we're involved, and he's a really good contact, so I'm gonna try to make that connection for him, and that'll be somebody else that he can reach out to. Yep.
That'll be helpful,
Yep, so.
for sure.
And just the last one, I've tried to create a list as best I can on the special and annual. Obviously, kind of put it down there, but the placeholders are the ones I'm still trying to work on, getting stuff ready. Some of the other ones are either just ones we do every year or ones we've kind of talked about and I definitely want to go forward with. I'll update that every week.
I forgot the date. When did we close the hearing? I forgot. April 16th,
I'll say it's the 14th.
14th?
I believe it's the 14th.
Okay. So there's still time for submittals.
Yes.
Did that change? I thought tonight was the night we were going to review them and then send them to town council after tonight.
That's,
Because we wanted them like reviewed before the next step, I thought.
Tracy would know. She's
looking.
Can I just ask generally what 61A awareness is?
Yeah, so the David Zelonis, the open space chair, he wanted to pursue some sort of funding from the CPA to basically send kind of like a informational packet of information to anyone that owns a 61A or B property to kind of inform them of what their, I guess their rights or what they're able to do with their property. So it was kind of like a mailer to those people.
Okay.
But he was waiting on information from somebody, so it's just a placeholder right now,
Okay.
really.
Okay.
The March 31st date was the first draft one that we did. It's now April 14th. The
Okay.
warrant closes at 4 p.m.
Okay.
And then you will be looking at articles on May 5th
Yep.
to make recommendations to be placed on the warrant.
Okay.
Thank you.
And along those lines, Madam Town Clerk suggested that at your next meeting, you schedule this town meeting, the special.
Oh,
Because we
okay, will
haven't
you
done
make a
that
note,
yet.
can you make a note for that? Because the timeline's a little different for that, but, we could squeeze that in on the 8th before we start the department head.
The 9th.
The sign.
Is it the 9th?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, maybe we can just, and then we can just open it or schedule it. So she has at least that information. All right,
Just one quick clarifying question, Article 9, recall provision at the school committee, right? That's not a change to the other one.
Right, it's for the school one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
okay, at least they're not 29.
Not yet.
Excess equity, can you refresh my memory?
Yeah, we have to adopt something, some sort of provision before we can, basically handle the updated guidance from the state.
All right, anybody else? Okay.
I just actually have one more, and it was on the, 12 and 14. We have it called out specifically on some of the bylaws, but I don't see where we strengthened the wording of the bylaw for the civil fines.
That would be Article 7.
Okay, but you have it just listed under one instead of multiple? so
Yeah,
that-
it's gonna be, that's just like a reminder for
Okay.
myself, yeah, it's gonna
Okay.
be across multiple ones.
All right. Thank you.
Good memory. All right, agenda item number 4. We have a set of minutes from March 10th, 2025 in front of us. Did everybody get a chance to review? All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the select board meeting minutes of March 10th, 2025.
I'm sorry. Wait, I did have one thing.
Oh.
I should have spoken up. I'm sorry.
Well, we can do that during the discussion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
So I'll
moved.
entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second with discussion.
Motion and a second in discussion, Brenna?
I think it's on, oh, okay, page 5. It's the last paragraph. Member Donahue said to clean up the property, it will cost about 2 million. That was a misspeak on my part. I was just trying to explain to Mr. Kavicki the situation. I wasn't saying it's gonna cost 2 million to clean up, and I just wanted to clarify that.
Is there a way that you'd like to have it worded differently?
In this hypothetical situation, it would cost 2 million, I guess.
Okay.
Well, they were asking for 2 mil from the state, Rhino was.
Right,
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
didn't want it
that's
to
what
be
we're trying to explain to
interpreted
them.
as that's all it's gonna
yeah.
cost.
Yeah.
Got it.
I wish it was 2 mil.
I know.
Any more, Brenna?
No, that's it.
I
Thank you.
have one, Madam Chair, page 5, last paragraph. Member Candido said that is why we don't have an opportunity to do a bond. I think I just said that's why we haven't had the opportunity.
That is why we haven't had the opportunity. Okay. All right, Brian, Leah?
No.
All right. And roll, please.
Baby and I.
Donahue, aye.
Carboni, aye.
Yeah.
Okay, agenda item number 5. Discuss some possible vote on the approval of assessor candidate, wages and benefits. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Andrew.
Okay. So I would say the assessor search has been pretty long, arduous, not very easy. It's taken a few different stages. As you guys know, we went out for an RFP initially, as well as a posting. We've posted the RFP 3 times. Only one company has ever put in RRG. After the 3rd RFP, they've since declared that they're not going to be able to provide the services. So that's kind of one of the initial backgrounds. We did a search at the as I've said, at the very start. We found a couple candidates, but none that the Board of Assessors was comfortable with picking. And so we got lucky, I think, with the candidate we ended up getting. Just as an aside, when I was in Taunton, the assessor there who has worked for the state for 40 years, he had always told me the best assessor in the state was this guy, the guy that is before us. And when I came to Lakeville, I had called Rick and I had said, like, who could possibly take this job? And he said, no one for the salary. I said, well, we're gonna try. Eventually, luckily, Rick convinced this guy to apply for us. So fast track, we interviewed maybe 3 weeks ago now.
At least a couple weeks.
It was me, John Oliveri, and Michael Ellis, the town accountant. We found somebody, finally. Board of Assessors finally agreed to it. So I think he's very well qualified. The issue before us tonight is that we're gonna, in order to land him, we would have to offer something higher than what we posted for the job originally. I'm aware it kind of sets a bad precedent, probably paying more than we'd like, but I think it's probably lower than what the candidate would like. But as the Wage and Personnel Board, the Select Board would have to agree to some of these points that are in the memo for you. I can run through them quickly. So he's looking for a starting salary of $95,000, effective May 14th, and then on July 1st it would be $100,000, 35 hours per week, and then 4 weeks of vacation. So that's
Clarification?
Yep.
He's considered a department head, correct?
Correct.
So the 4 weeks would be a standard
I thought it was 2 weeks.
for all our department heads now, isn't it?
Isn't it
We
3
haven't
weeks?
changed it. It's 2 weeks and then we never changed it. And then after so many years, then we had the next week. But I think that was something that we were gonna look into, try to create some parity.
Yeah,
Across the board.
and so I think a few of us internally would like to bring everyone kind of up with a class and comp study. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it with the original one, so we're going to be doing that. Unfortunately, we can't fix them all right this moment, so I think our thought was to do this and then kind of come back and look at every union and non-union position and bring them up to some sort of equity.
I think it's a good lever when we don't have money to give time. If, you know, some people find it equally as valuable to have time. I know we're in a bad position financially. But I do want to make sure, because a lot of times these hires, when we are hiring from outside and we're offering probably something that seems slightly sweeter than our existing people have, it creates division. It creates, you know, a feeling of not being valued, and that couldn't be further from the truth. It's where we are with the market. It's where we are with specifically this role, which if you go on the MMA website, it's littered with roles for assessors right now. It's a very difficult position to fill. So scarcity of resources and all that.
Yeah, we definitely found that in the search. There's not many qualified people out there. I also think Robbie would make up for it with what he's going to find us and new growth and just personal property.
That was a question I had for Mr. Alveri.
But before we get started, just for the record, I just want to say that John Oliveri, our chair of our Board of Assessors, is joining us at the table. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. So if,
Now that we're having a full-time is this 5 days for the 35 or is it
4.
4 long days?
4
All
long
right,
days.
so we're having full coverage basically in the office compared to the day or the day and a half that was being covered before with our other system. So that being said, are we creating some redundancies where we can save money regarding some of the things we've outserviced before?
Great question, and I was going to touch on that. So although we are, and for those of you who remember the last time I was here, one of the issues that the board had was that the candidates we had outside of the contract that we had in place with RRG, we knew we were going to have to outsource a lot of additional items. The only item right now that we know we're going to have to outsource would be commercial and industrial. And we've already made inquiries, and that coupled with this 95, eventually 100,000 is still going to be significantly less than what we would have had to had we brought in a more green candidate. And to piggyback on what Andrew said, I mean, this guy is very impressive.
Especially the longevity in the roles too.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing this for,
Yep.
25, 30 years. And I will comment on the vacation time. I understand, and to your point, Maureen, it doesn't mean that the other folks in town hall aren't valued, but the way I always look at it is just because you're changing jobs doesn't mean you haven't put the time in to earn the 3 or the 4 weeks that you've had. And I think the trade-off from getting him, although we're going to pay a little more than what initially it looks like we wanted to your point, I think we're going to save a lot in the end, and giving him that 4 weeks probably has a lot to do with him saying, yeah, I can do it for the 95 initially and then the 100 as opposed to 125, 130 type of deal.
Not to mention 3 extra days of coverage in the office.
And he is available on Fridays.
Yeah.
I mean, we made that clear that, even though you're not literally going to be here on Fridays, if he needs to be here,
Perfect.
meetings, phone calls, whatever the case may be.
And to touch on one last thing, he's been a data collector as like a private contractor, so he does have that skill set. He's not just an office guy. He can go out in the field.
Fantastic. That was my next question, so that's great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It seems like from, I don't know if I was talking to Andrew or John, like it seemed like 110 was the number where like people wouldn't even come out of the woodwork to look at this position. And if you do the math, 35 hours, that rate, if you were to carry it to 40, gets you up, it would have been about 108 or so. So it looks like he's kind of working with us to say, okay,
Move down to,
drop down the time a little bit, and I'm still kind of getting the rate I would want to. We're close.
Yeah, I think like Andrew said, I mean, we're kind of lucking out here. We're getting the perfect candidate at the perfect time for him.
Yep.
I'm not so sure if this was 5 years ago, he would have been interested in entertaining it, so.
Leah, Brenna?
Yeah, so it just goes to show you the struggle is real for us in smaller rural towns, because principal assessors of this caliber have to drive through how many towns to get here. So to me, it's worth, and I definitely see him coming into the office and streamlining some processes and everything else. So
it's exciting.
yeah, it is. Yep. And I mean, that's the same reason why how many years ago, John, we outsourced, because we couldn't raise the salary high enough. So we did the next best thing, which was to outsource at the time. So we have to do it.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate your pushing and like, helping along the process too. I think we got to a good spot
Yeah.
from everyone working together on it.
Yep. Yeah.
There's
I'm
also-
really excited.
There's also one thing hidden on the resume. I don't know him, but he lives in the same town as I do, and he's the chair of the finance committee there. And I've gone to a few community meetings because I'm kind of not engaged, but I'm interested in different things, and he's very smart. I've seen him get up and defend debt exclusions and everything else. So I think with some of the stuff we're going to be dealing with in town the next few years, he's someone that second nature to him.
That was one of the key components in the board, for the record, Board of Assessors voted unanimously to appoint him to the position. But the fact that, as Andrew said, I mean, he serves in his town too, so not only does he get the technical aspect of being an assessor, he gets the, I don't know, political component is the right way to put it, but he understands there's a lot of moving parts, and it's not just about coming in, crunching numbers and leaving the office at the end of the day, so.
I know you mentioned his name and I'm looking at the memo. I didn't see the individual's name in the memo. So it's
Yeah.
Robert
Robert Alford,
Alford, okay,
goes by Robbie.
okay, because you had said something and I, what is he talking about? I thought maybe it was somebody at the state that you
Oh,
were
no.
buddy with, okay.
No.
All right, Robert Alford. All right, well then I guess, I'll entertain a motion, to approve the recommendation from the town administrator and, human resources, as well as our board of assessors to appoint Robert Alford to the assessor's position.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion?
This isn't to speak against the individual or candidate. I just want to point out his resume. I like that he spent about 4 years at each place, but the bullet points are all identical. And I just hope it goes well.
I think the job's pretty much the same at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's one thing.
There's a lot of creativity.
Variety in that.
There's no variety in what they do.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. Okay, very good.
No, but it's an interesting point.
Yeah. That's why there's five of us.
Gave up working for taxpayers after Norfolk. He must have learned his
Yes. Done.
Oh, no, it's not.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Roll please.
Baby and I.
Donahue, aye.
Carboni, aye.
Candido, I.
Yeah.
Yay.
All right, and so we'll call him Robert. We'll start on May 14th, is that it? Okay.
Welcome to the team.
Thank you, John.
You're
we'll
welcome.
schedule some
Finally got
time.
there. Took a little while.
We can, invite him to our select board meeting and make a proper
We
introduction.
will make sure
That
he's
would
at
be
one of your meetings within the first few weeks of him being here.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, it's a little after 6:15. I'd like to invite Mr. Robert Marshall to the table. So we're on to agenda item number 6. And Robert Marshall is here to talk to us about a concern regarding our local access stations. And I'm going to ask for you to lead the conversation.
Thank you. As a matter of fact, I sent another letter to Andrew this afternoon from the president of LakeCAM. I don't know whether you folks got it or
did
not.
get it, yes.
But it's pretty much the same type of thing. The concern is this. Presently, and for a long, long time, we've had Chapter 166A, the present cable law that provides LakeCAM with the funding to have, folks, record all the meetings and any other programs and so forth. And that's up to a maximum of 5% of gross annual revenues for the cable company, for the town. And at present, there is no such law that would govern if the programming were streaming. And as people go to look for more reasonable rates, as I found myself in that situation about a month ago, my bill went up 14%, about $40, and I said, whoa, what is going on here? So as usual, I called and said, we got to work out another deal that's more reasonable. And they said, there are no more deals. Well, excuse me, that's after I went through a litany of, waiting and switching and back and people I couldn't understand and what have you. And finally, after about 45 minutes to an hour, I said, enough already. I'm going over to Rainham to the store. And I spoke to a very nice gentleman who basically told me that Comcast is no longer a cable company. They're a streaming company. And they would just as soon, although he didn't say this, I think this was his implication, they would just as soon get rid of cable and cable funding and so forth and go to streaming because they don't have to pay the towns up to whatever percent. There's no law existing that governs that. So as we've already experienced a slight decline at LakeCAM in cable funding of about 2 to 3% over the last couple of years, but in other places, sometimes as much as 30% from what I've read. So it looks like the technology and the industry is moving in that direction, and we don't have a law that would help us fund LakeCAM. And as the funding drops, our ability to hire people, keep them, train them, keep them, drops. And the services that people have come to expect are going to be pretty hard to come by. So we come to you tonight. My initial letter, I was coming here tonight, and then because of the timing of the LakeCAM's meetings, John didn't have the time to write a letter, so he got one in and asked me to present it. We're asking, could you folks as a board please, sorry about that. I figured they could hear me down at the park. It's just gotcha. We're asking, can you contact Representative Oral and Senator Roderick's office, them, and ask them, number one, can they find out where this bill is? And last conversation I had with Jose was he thought it was in committee, which is a good thing, I think, because the House bill that I read, I didn't see the percentage included, but the Senate bill I did. So I think there's got to be some work done there. So could you ask where this thing sits, and would they please strongly support it? Because if the cable funding keeps dropping, we're going to be in a financial difficulty.
Did I miss, did you already say what the bill number was?
I did not, but I can.
Okay.
It's,
You got it there, Bob?
hang on, it's
It's in the new
Senate, Senate 41 and House 106, according to Jonathan's letter. I think in my initial
there it is,
email to Andrew, I might have said it used to be, like last year, House 74, but I wasn't aware that they had updated it yet and put one into the House and Senate yet. So apparently there's been some work done on it, but this is something that I think needs a little push from all of the communities. It isn't just Lakeville that's going to be impacted by this. It's going to be all of the communities, the way I understand it.
Madam Chair?
Did they indicate timing wise as to when they were looking to, I mean, if that's where they're looking to go, obviously there's
Do you mean
wheels
the
in
cable
motion,
companies?
yes.
Gosh, I wouldn't pretend to know what's going on in the minds of Comcast and Verizon.
Well, I just want to know, because we've entered into an agreement with them,
But if there's no funding, it doesn't matter.
no, I'm not saying just with LakeCAM, but I'm talking about our residents too, that, if they're doing away with cable, it's going to be a broader issue.
I was
so-
told that they're just, they're not going to be, and this was only Comcast I spoke to at the office, and I don't know how informed this gentleman he seemed to be. I was told that they are simply looking to become an internet company, which I think means streaming instead of cable, because there's a cable law that says they have to reimburse the towns, whereas with streaming, there is no such law as far as I know. And that's what I think we have to get put into place ASAP.
Madam Chair, to your point, there is nothing Comcast has put forward nor Verizon has put forward saying that they are terminating anything. Doesn't mean that's not true. Just means they haven't put forward things. I do know progress on putting in structural cable or fiber has slowed down significantly in the last 3 or 4 years, and they're not doing it in Boston at all for Verizon, where they did have a project and they stopped doing that. So to Bob's point, it's obviously something that they're trying to convert to for ease and, you know, not having to do physical stuff. The fee that is collected is a pass-through fee, so it doesn't really impact them per se. They're collecting a fee from each of the subscribers and they're passing it through, and then it's going to cable. But to Bob's point, there's nothing to protect us for when it goes streaming. I know Mass Access had been putting lots of legislation forward and moving forward, and I do believe as a board that we should support this because it supports, we won't have cable access in the future. It'll just disappear because we only get a portion of the fees. If there's no fees, there's no cable access. What I would say, and this is just my personal opinion, is LakeCAM has a really great opportunity to use their platform in order to educate people before meetings on what could happen if they don't reach out and support. We as a board have a voice for sure, but having all the subscribers have a voice and be able to weigh in, you know, has some weight to it as well. I would recommend if it's something, an avenue that's available to you that.
Well, folks, you hear that?
That, you know, you have before every meeting. Do you enjoy having cable access?
Well, we generally, although we've been meeting far more regularly of late, we look to meet quarterly to deal with budget and what have you, and you know, other things, programming, etc. So I'm not sure that's enough. And this is I don't know how timely an issue this has to be. I mean, I don't know if this is in committee, by when does it have to be decided? When will it go for a vote? And so forth. So
yeah, it's a gray area. The second it goes into committee,
it's a very gray area.
But if we can get more people and you know, anyone to reach out to each of the offices, I would also recommend creating a letter that people can just put their name to in order to push that forward.
Well, we have 2 samples right here that we could certainly use.
Yep.
I'll speak to Jose about that. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I think, you know, the more the merrier for the process.
Indeed.
But yes, it's been something that's an ongoing trend for like the last 10 years where we're losing cable to subscriptions because of costs. There's an added stressor for Massachusetts a couple weeks ago, and they amended it. DOR and Maura Healey announced that they were going to tax cable boxes.
What?
Yes, I do not kid you. They announced they were.
I hadn't heard that.
Yes, individual cable boxes. So they were going to put a tax on the individual cable boxes.
Aimed at the companies or the subscribers?
Aimed at the subscribers. So the subscribers were going to have to pay an additional tax on a rented cable box. So I believe it has died at this point, but if they revamped it at some point, it would drive people right over.
Oh, sure.
Because why are you going to pay an extra 6% tax on a cable box instead of go that way? So, I sent some letters and I had some other people send some letters to DOR, for the comment, portion about what are you doing? Do you even know how this works?
Sometimes you really wonder what's going through folks' minds.
Yeah, so they have something in committee and all of a sudden they're trying to do a separate thing as a cash grab to shore up their accounts. So just to let you know if you weren't aware of that issue.
I was not. Shame on me.
No shame. So much going on.
Is this board?
I was just going to throw my own experience in here. So like, I've tried my best to partially read some of the federal and state laws on this, which is, you know, just enough to make you dangerous, not good. I mean, I got rid of my cable subscription from Verizon a few months ago, kept the internet, but got rid of the cable. So now I no longer pay I just look it up, $5.55 PEG fee, because even though I still use Verizon, I no longer buy cable access, which is really weird. But like, they're still using the public way. It's just that now I'm not using the service that they have the franchise agreement with us.
Exactly.
It goes pole to pole as opposed to over the line. So that's the distinction.
I'm just saying Comcast and Verizon are the only 2 we have the franchise agreements with, right? So there's the only 2 that you could get the PEG from. So if you had like TMLP or something, you probably.
And I must say that it is I think most folks would be amazed at how expensive it is to run even a small cable studio as we have.
Yep.
I mean, it is expensive, which is why I think Comcast and Verizon, I'm not sure Verizon was ever into it, but Comcast we shared a studio with Middleborough, and I think that's part of the reason why they got out of the cable studio business. I remember back in, it was 2012, when we were told that we're not gonna be in that business anymore. So that's how LakeCAM came to be. And it was that fast. So
I think one thing we all probably need to be cautious of too, though, is like, I don't know about other households, but the streaming stuff turns into like death by a thousand cuts, right? You've got Netflix and YouTube and Disney Plus and all these other ones. So like, are we going to go from paying one smaller peg fee to Verizon to paying a bunch to a bunch of different places? And now I'm suddenly paying $40 a month instead of $5. Like, how do they figure that out?
Percent wouldn't make a difference though, if you're doing percent.
If I'm paying 4% on top of
Yeah.
All the others.
7 different
Yep.
services, then that's going to be more out of my pocket. Good for LakeCAM, but something to keep in mind as we go down this path.
Agreed. All right, well, is there an appetite for the board?
Make a motion.
I'll entertain a motion to.
Make a motion.
To submit a letter, to our legislatures, regarding the Senate Bill 41 and the House Bill 106, in support of getting something done.
Yeah.
Always in support of getting something done.
So moved if I didn't hear one, sorry.
I so moved if you want.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, roll please.
Baby and I.
Donahue, aye.
Carboni, aye.
Indeed, away.
Yeah.
Mr. Marshall, thank you very much.
thank you very much. Fingers crossed.
Every time I see you, I learn something new about.
Well, and tonight I learned something new. I didn't want to learn it, but I learned it.
You can't unlearn it now.
That's true.
Okay, it is 6:32. We have a public hearing right now. And let's see what we have here. So it's agenda item number 7. It's a poll hearing, and that was poll, P-O-L-E, hearing for 9 Cross Street. So I will entertain a motion to open the poll hearing for Middleborough Gas and Electric and Verizon New England, Inc. regarding service at 9 Cross Street at 6:32 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second. Roll.
Baby and I.
Donahue, aye.
Carboni, aye.
Indeed, away.
Day aye.
You gonna say something, Leanne?
Yeah, do you have to read?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. So there was a. Just want to make sure I gotta read the right thing here.
Madam Chair, I read the notice to the abutters.
Okay. All right, so there was a notice that had gone out to the abutters dated March 10th, 2025. And the letter reads, Dear Abutter, at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, March 31st, 2025, the Lakeville Select Board will hold a public hearing at the Lakeville Police Station, 232 Bedford Street, Lakeville, Mass., to consider the petition of Middleborough Gas and Electric Department and Verizon New England, Inc., requesting permission to locate 8 new poles on Cross Street, identified as poles 33 through 40, to service the property located at 9 Cross Street. I have enclosed a copy of the plan showing proposed location of the poles for your review. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact Tracy Craig McGee at 508-946-8803, extension 4, then 1, or by email at tcraig-mcgee@lakevillema.org. Okay, so this went out to the abutters, and CC'd on this was Middleborough Gas and Electric Department, Verizon New England, ROSO Investment Realty at 5 Arches Way in Acushnet, Ocean Spray Cranberries Inc. at 1 Ocean Spray Drive, Tracy Capone at 68 Taunton Street, Judith Hanna and William Borden at 70 Taunton Street, Robert and Linda Hinault at 74 Taunton Street, and Keith and Elizabeth Goudreau at 4052 Acushnet Avenue in Bedford. Okay, let's see. So we have a little map in front of us. Is there somebody here representing Middleborough Gas and Electric? If you wouldn't mind, come on up, state your name
I'd be glad to.
for the record.
Zach Hershey, Middleborough Gas and Electric, the electric division manager. So this is a basic pole line to feed number 9 Cross Street. It's going to be 8 poles staked out. You'll see it goes, kind of jogs back and forth. We try to minimize tree trimming and that sort, so we try to go back and forth as best we can. And this is just a basic 40-foot poles. We're going to run primary and put a transformer at the last pole to feed number 9 Cross Street.
Does the board have any questions? I'm sorry, Joe.
Zach
Zach.
Hershey, yep.
Madam Chair, through you, does this mean that the Ocean Spray property and the Goudreau property currently don't have any power?
They are fed a different way.
Fed a different way.
Yeah, there are actually no poles on that entire section of Cross Street.
Okay. So do you have to change them, or can they not have any interruption in service, or?
It will not affect anybody else. It will just be a brand new line to feed Cross Street. And if more development comes down the line, we'll be
Billy,
that
be
much
ready for
closer
it.
to feed them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any residents here? If you wouldn't mind, if you could come up to the table and state your name.
I had one quick question if I may
Oh,
before
sure.
you're going. I was just gonna ask MG&E, there's a lot of other homes just past that. Is there already infrastructure there?
There is coming down. We felt that this was the best way to feed it coming up the other way.
Are you gonna get,
off of that
are you gonna
circuit.
get like a new loop out of this, or are they gonna be separate?
They'll still be separate. They will
Okay.
still be separate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi, I'm Keith Goudreau, 5 Cross Street. I guess my question is going to be, we're looking to eventually be building property. Will we have access to this pole in the future?
Yeah.
Or do you have to do any massive work?
So on 5, so it's basically going to, we're going to be going right past
Mhm.
this property. So, yes, you will have access to electricity. Do you know single phase, I'm assuming, versus 3 phase?
I got no clue when
Okay, so this is a regular, so this is for a regular, like residential 12240, like a house service. It wouldn't be
Straight
anything.
residential. When you're saying there's going to be a transformer on the last one, I just wanted to make
Yep.
sure that wouldn't affect.
Nope, we could absolutely feed you as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else here to speak? All right, and the select board, anybody else have anything on this? And we're still putting up polls.
We sure are.
All right. So I guess what I'll do at this point is I will entertain a motion to close. Well, do I have to do motions here before I close?
You have to close the
Close it
hearing.
before we go into the others,
Vote
right?
Once the hearing
Okay.
is closed.
So I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing at 6:38 PM.
So moved.
Second.
Roll, please.
Baby and I.
Johnny, who I?
Carboni, aye.
Say aye.
Right. And with that, I will entertain a motion to grant permission to Middleborough Gas and Electric and Verizon New England, Inc. to locate 8 new poles identified as poles 33 through 40 on Cross Street to service the property located at 9 Cross Street.
So moved with discussion.
Second. Motion and a second and discussion.
So that's kind of where I was going with my question, was to be sure that if someone else comes in, they'll be able to connect.
Yeah, it's
And
not,
that's-
right now it's specifically for that customer, but if
Yeah.
others come in, the infrastructure will already be there, so.
Okay.
Yep,
All
we
right.
build for the future, so.
Okay,
for that reason.
and years ago, when folks were off the beaten path, they had to pay for like their own poles. That's not the case anymore, right?
In the public way, no.
Okay.
No. If you go onto your private property,
Yep.
several poles, we
Yep.
would, yes, but not in
Okay.
the public way.
Thank you.
Anybody else for discussion? All right, hearing none, roll please.
Fabian, I.
Donahue, aye?
Carboni, aye.
Day I.
Okay, carry on.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Let me see here. Yes, because we have a 7 p.m. All right, at this time, I would like to take a 5-minute recess. LakeCAM, if you can stop recording for us, it's 6:40, so we'll come back about 1:15. Welcome back, everyone, for a brief meeting. It is now 6:50 p.m. So we have a 7 o'clock meeting with our finance committee for a presentation of our FY26 budget. So in the meantime, we still have 10 minutes. I'm going to go through a few of these other agenda items that we can check off, so we're not here until April Fool's. Because that's what one of the members said would be tomorrow. All right, so if we could get down to agenda item number 11. So I had asked Andrew to put this on the agenda, even though I did set the agenda, but I did ask him to put this on here. So with a lot of discussions amongst this particular board about activity happening down 105, the planning board, the zoning board, conservation, I thought it might be a good idea for us to entertain the possibility of establishing a Route 105 Main Street traffic flow task force. So I know that we are concerned with the developments that are coming in. They're going to be staggered, so they're not all happening at once. We had the discussion with the concerns of Bridge Street. You know, way back in the day, we had talked about having light there, but then one of the other developments across the street from Bridge Street talked about an opening that was not directly across from Bridge Street, which was down a little bit, which would have been, I guess, a little off from that light, should there have been a light, but maybe there's other options. I know that Mass DOT would need to be engaged. So it's just, I just wanted to throw it out there because I know that it's been a topic of conversation amongst a lot of other boards committees as well. So,
Madam Chair?
yes.
Can we make this part of the Economic Development Committee? Could it be part of their charge? I mean, it all flows, right? I mean, all of these things are growth related. I would just see that maybe it would have a home with the same people that would be making some of the economic development decisions. It's like maybe a slight stretch, but I think it would be kind of like the same type of group.
I absolutely see your point. I know the Economic Development Committee is under the open meeting law because it is a subcommittee versus this was just a task, you know, a traffic flow task force, you know, but again, it's just open for discussion. So
Can I ask, like, what would you hope to get out of a task force, or who would be there, let's say, that wouldn't be staff? I guess.
well, I guess the way I envisioned, I mean, we have a lot on our town administrator's plate right now.
What?
Although we could add some more things too. But I'm just trying to be kind. I guess because there's so much happening, I see that the boards, committees, and commissions that would have, you know, like the planning board, obviously, because they're, you know, dealing with the developers, and then having those conversations. You know, there's the conversations, I think maybe with Mass DOT would have to be there.
What about master plan? Would it fall under master plan? I'm just trying to think of a way not to add, like, because we are adding and we're already having trouble filling roles. So I'm trying to extend as opposed to
Right, or, but not necessarily, you know, I mean, if the town administrator, if we direct the town administrator to, you know, put a working group together to, you know, come up with, I guess.
I mean, I don't dislike the idea, and I think if there was such a thing, then it would stay on point, but I think Andrew's been on point on a lot of stuff he's done since he's gotten here, so,
Would it be like the planner, the DPW director, and the police chief?
and the town
And
administrator.
the town administrator, yeah. You're just a given.
Yeah.
Do we want any elected officials?
But only if you need political backing.
Well, I mean, it's gonna need, like, 105 is a state road, so,
Right.
at some point.
I just don't want, I want, you know, maybe it starts from a certain point to another point, you know, on
Yeah.
105 Main Street. You know, this is where, you know, there's the largest opportunity for development. This is the,
Yeah,
you know,
we
the
talked
concerns.
about that years ago, that 105 and 18 are our only real corridors of opportunity and development.
Right, and we already have projects in the making right now that are happening with no resolution to what the impacts are gonna be on 105. I don't know when the last time Mass DOT did a study, you know, on 105.
Probably the warehouse.
Yeah, it was 2022. Traffic study?
Again, I don't dislike the idea at all. I think there's actually, you know, I think Andrew could possibly get some help from other staff members to work on this, but it is a state road. I can see the point for, you know, having, you know, one of us on the board, but I don't know if we just, again, only because there's an election next week, just maybe delay it till like Maureen said, maybe the Economic Development Committee gets established and then, not established, filled.
I think that's, like, I feel like it's a road to nowhere where it's a state road. Like, then, you know, if they said, okay, we might be interested, then we gotta get onto, what is it, the tip, which is, as we've seen with 79, years out.
Years.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if this is how do we tie this into EDC? Is this something that could be part of an EDC study that we can have, you know, with a community compact? I can't remember now the names of the grants lately.
Community one-stops.
One stop, thank you. Like to say like, hey, here's our corridors. What do we do? I mean, I have to probably wrongly assume that Mass DOT has already been involved in all these major projects there, since that's their road. I mean, the warehouse was big.
That budget down. Also, that's a big variable. I don't know where that's gonna stand. On our side, we really can't provide any more funding. So it's a little concerning. And so we're gonna obviously meet with the departments on April 9th, 10th, and 15th to ask more questions. I think a big thing going forward with whatever plan we choose is a lot of communication and outreach. I haven't quite talked this through with Mike yet, but I'd like to have probably some sort of open houses to kind of go over the budget. I don't know if that's necessarily been done in the past, but maybe a weekend or a night or two to kind of have people show up and grill us on questions on, because people, it's really, budget's complicated. There's a lot of moving factors, and even before I got into this, I couldn't tell you how to balance a budget, you know? And so when you really go over it with somebody, they can really understand where the money comes from, the limitations of the town, and everything else.
I'll go over some of the revenue estimates. First, the tax levy, as Andrew mentioned, $727,009, which is simply our prior year levy limit times 2.5%. Unfortunately, you'll see state aid is down. Smart growth was down over $400,000. That was a huge factor. We're hoping to get that back. You're going to see local receipts increase, $492,000. However, we de-enterprised the transfer station, so we are just inheriting their revenue. But as you'll see further in the presentation, we're inheriting their expenses as well. So this is basically going to be a net zero. Some of the other increases to local receipts, we went up $25,000 in EMS. Motor vehicle excise, we went up $55,000. And we increased investment income 30,000, but about half of that, again, is transfer station investment income that we will now take in the general fund. You know, Andrew mentioned, unfortunately, we had to use free cash as a plug to balance the budget. It's not ideal. We tried to squeeze every bit of revenue we could. New growth estimates were 210 to 250. We maxed out at 250. Sorry, it's on this slide. And then debt exclusion, these are obviously covered on the tax recap. 805,000 of our 1.2 million in debt. So about 400,000 is paid for out of the operating budget. The 805 is raised on the recap. And then the debt exclusion for the schools is also raised on the recap. That's 135,480, which is built into the annual assessment. As shown here in the last bullet, you know, total revenues went up about 3.34% from FY25, which you know, is fairly consistent with years past. So this is just kind of a pie chart overview of the percentages from fiscal 25 and fiscal 26. Not much has changed. 83% of our revenue base is our tax levy. The only change you see is local receipts and state aid plus minus 1%. And it's really just the drop in smart growth and the increase in the transfer station revenue that we'll take into the general fund.
So this is our new growth projection for this year. It's a little bit of an optimistic number. I mean, there are things that'll be built in 26, but it's not going to be like you see in 24 and 23, and then even 22 is a high number. So really, new growth is subject. It's the subject that's to taxation for the first time, new construction, personal property. So you can get to the next slide. And so this is really the big. We kind of get into it. The thing that's concerned me most about Rhino's presentation is that they may not go forward with it for a couple years, and when that's the case, it's going to take about 3 years to build out, and so we're not going to see that new growth for probably 4 or 5 years. Rocky Woods, kind of the same case. It's still in permitting phase. Really not even at that point. And so those are two huge, probably the biggest projects in town. We're not going to see for a few years. There's 19 Main and the Hardin Street property. Those are commercial in nature. Those are the ones that are probably going to come and be built fairly quickly. But there's a whole lot of 40Bs in the system. And when that's the case, really the increases in new growth get really zeroed out by resulting services, whether it's education, police, fire. And so what I've been kind of trying to do behind the scenes, you guys maybe didn't realize it when I was presenting this stuff originally, was I reconvened the Economic Development Committee. I'm trying to put an application in for an economic development strategy. These are things that you might not see a difference for a few years, but just trying to hold on until some of this stuff comes on the books, more or less. So this is really the big one. We've seen a net decrease of state aid of 325,000. The average smart growth the previous 8 years has been 477,000. Our number this year is 246,000. And so it's a very different, this is pretty much, we were notified this early on in the budget process, and it's really kind of been biting us every turn. We keep finding ourselves behind the 8 ball with this number. Essentially what has happened is Lakeville and Lunenburg, Massachusetts have been the only really 2 smart growth applicants the prior 20 years. I guess the secret has gotten out, and there's been, I think, 5 or 6 towns coming to the table this year. Now the state only budgets 1.5 million. So when you have 6 towns as opposed to 2, the apple gets a lot smaller. And so that's really what the decrease has been. I've called Senator Rodericks maybe a dozen times, trying to get this number back up. He seems hopeful, but he can't guarantee it, and we're not likely to find out until mid to late May, which is obviously very late in the budget process. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. If we do get it back, we'll have to have a serious conversation with what we're going to do with it. for certain.
So this next slide just kind of dives into a 5-year review of local receipts. As you can see, we increased motor vehicle to a number that we felt comfortable with, as well as EMS and investment income. Again, investment income, we're going to take in about 15 to 20,000 now from the transfer station. That was recorded as revenue in the enterprise fund. These are really conservative estimates, and they have to be. They're based off fiscal 24's actuals, and really the last thing you want to do is overshoot your estimates as the year goes on.
Yes, question.
Sure.
For the investment income, are we not including the $5 million for, what was it, the tower? What was the other income there?
That stays with the stabilization fund. This is just general fund revenue.
Okay, so just general.
Yeah. But yeah, so conservative local receipt estimates. As I mentioned, you really don't want to estimate higher than your actuals in the prior year, because as the year goes on, if you don't meet those marks, you have to have a budget amendment in the wrong direction, which you want to avoid. You don't want to have mid-year cuts. So.
Sorry to be bothered.
No.
Another question on
Sure.
the EMS. So every time I look at a presentation for EMS for the ambulance, I see an increase in ambulance calls year over year. I know in 2021, 2022, there was a strategy change where we were no longer providing as much mutual aid as we were. There was a strategy change. If we're having so many more EMS calls, why don't I see that reflected in the EMS revenues?
There's a few variables. Really depends on the call, I guess, where the revenue comes from, whether it's Medicare or just the average person. I think there's different reimbursement rates that the town gets, so there might be more calls, but maybe less revenue. The fire chief can definitely dive into that a lot better than I can.
Can we get a breakdown of that so we can?
Yeah, can we aren't we due a rate change too? Hasn't it
Yeah,
been
I remember we
almost 2
changed
years
that.
since
We
we did a
changed
rate change?
2019, and then what was
Yeah.
it, 2022? Yeah, so.
Yeah, my next slide gets into
Sorry.
that a little
Sorry
bit.
to- Sorry to be like that.
Nah, no problem.
You got through 12 slides with no questions. It's pretty good.
So these are the opportunities. We, Mike and I, and Lacey to an extent, basically just try to think, how can we possibly raise revenue in Lakeville? Obviously one is EMS fees. That is likely to come to the board in April. I know the Board of Health is also looking to change fees potentially in the future. So those are the easiest ones. The meals tax, which I don't think Lakeville has ever adopted, maybe hasn't even really brought up, maybe in
2017,
it did go.
we brought it up, it was shut down, because they're like, oh, we don't have any restaurants in town. But restaurants are actually things like convenience store foods,
Right.
and Dunkin' Donuts, and all of those. So just to let everyone know, all the neighboring towns have them, where probably.
Yeah, back then, not all the neighboring
Nope,
towns had them.
But
so we
now
didn't-
I think it was us in Berkeley that didn't opt for it. Everywhere else did, but now I think Berkeley did about 2 years ago too. So just
Right.
throw out the history there.
So, we have the option to. I think the state is putting together a municipal empowerment bill that will raise, I think, from 0.75 to maybe 1% on top of the sales tax. Unfortunately, it's not quite a golden goose. I don't think it would bring in maybe more than 25 to 50,000 in a year.
That's.
Which, I mean, it's money, but it's it's a balancing act whether you want to do that to local businesses or not.
So we did a study on it, and it was 70,000 because of the
70.
convenience store, the Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, all of that. But I can see if I still have that. But yeah, that was the number back then. So I know we haven't had a lot of growth since then of new places to eat.
But
yeah,
prices have gone up.
What's that?
Prices have gone up.
They definitely have gone up, but it was things that when we first started looking at it, that we didn't know, that like, anything in the gas station, it would be eligible. And,
Primarily, town meeting voted it down because they didn't want the few folks that we had here to lose business to other towns.
Yeah, but now,
But now
that's not
it's-
even.
Right, it's everywhere, so.
Yep.
And so that could be a conversation the board has, before this town meeting or maybe the fall. And the other one that we could think of was a short-term rental tax. This is kind of a new thing in the Airbnb world, or post Airbnb world. As you can see, only 37 communities in the Commonwealth have this. I went through the list. It's mostly Berkshire towns, Cape towns, and Boston towns. We're not quite any of those. Not that we're not a draw, we just don't have as many Airbnbs.
Do you know how many we have?
I'd be guessing maybe 10.
I was gonna say a few years ago, it was maybe 10
That you know of.
So.
that we know of, yeah.
So, it fluctuated because obviously everything wasn't on the market. It was always 10, but there was, in the summer, it was 40 to 60, around the ponds. So what
Yeah.
happens is state law, they're allowed 2 weeks to rent without any of these fees, and then anything after 2 weeks, you're incurring the fees. So
Okay.
I don't know how much, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
of
right.
that number, how much would be able to be available?
So quite a bit of towns, are starting to put in the bylaws into place to register them, follow a process, but
10 times the amount of police calls.
I know,
10
yeah.
times the amount of EMS calls, those type of things.
right, we'll just be chasing, septic gets into it as well. So it's a long process. I don't want to say it's not a golden goose, but it's just one of those things that it takes some time to set up, and it's not a short-term solution, unfortunately.
So it's just a quick free cash analysis. Free cash was certified after fiscal '24 in the amount of $1,422,012. Only $16,369 has been used. That was at the fall town meeting to cover unpaid bills from the prior year. If everything that's currently presented before you tonight stands, we'll use, excuse me, $362,856 for the operating budget, a transfer of $150,000 to OPEB, and $470,000 to cover capital expenses, leaving an available balance from that free cash certification of $422,786.
So that does include some of the capital expenses.
Yes, we have $470,000 capital expenses covered under free cash, and the remainder, mostly capital stabilization and some other funds.
So that fiscal '24 number you see that's so large, that's from the radio tower. So that number, I think it was about 2 million or so, that went straight to capital stabilization.
And just for everyone here, it was taken out of operation. So it would have been, what, 60,000 a year into the operation budget that we removed by putting it in there. So it became a deficit.
And Lorraine and I did say, I have to give us credit, Lorraine, we're gonna miss this someday.
Today's Sunday.
Today is someday.
Yeah, it was about 45, just a little over 45,000 a year, that we were pulling in for the revenue for
But
that.
that was the old contract. The new contract, it would have been about 60 something.
Kind of playing off that, wasn't part of the presentation. Just today, someone notified us that they want to put another radio tower on town land, so might have another chance at it. So, obviously a lot of variables on that.
I'll have to talk about that because I know a new build coming up that I know needs one.
Yep, that too, definitely. So this is what we're gonna use for free cash this year. The first one, I still haven't decided whether it's gonna be a fall or the spring. A compensated absences article. So a lot of communities do this. So when, someone retires, typically you're faced with a huge payout. And so our thought was to put some seed money into this in order to pay out somebody when they retire. Otherwise you take it out of their line item and runs into deficits eventually at the end of the year. So this could be a fall item, it could be a spring item, it could be not an item. Really depends where we stand. We're gonna spend about $470,000 on the capital plan. As Mike had mentioned, we're gonna take a couple bites out of the capital stabilization account. But I think this is probably one of the last years we're gonna be able to reasonably put into capital out of free cash. We're gonna put 150,000 into the OPEB trust. Generally, what the town has done is put 310,000 into that account. This year, it's just very difficult to do that, without going negative free cash. And unfortunately, we are unable to put anything into the stabilization or the capital stabilization accounts.
So stabilization funds, it's essentially a special reserve fund where monies can be appropriated out of, somewhat of a rainy day fund. Currently, our general stabilization as of today has $2,686,000 in it. That number may differ from what's on the presentation just due to interest. The GFOA in state recommends having anywhere between 5 and 7% of your general fund operating budget in your stabilization fund, and we currently are just a touch over 7%. So we're right where the state and GFOA would recommend us to be. Capital stabilization balance, again, as of today with interest, is $2,898,000, so about 7,000 higher than what's presented. And if we were to utilize that for capital, it would be reduced down to about $2,005,000. We have about $890,000 or so in capital requests that would come out of capital stabilization.
This is one of the good news of the night. A lot of small towns like us do not have quite these healthy reserve accounts. A lot of people would borrow as opposed to use capital. So I think we're in a good spot with that, and especially when we're about to borrow on a large capital project like the fire station. You generally do a ratings call beforehand. We have a strong borrowing rating. We're a AA+, which is very, very good. It's better than most of the surrounding communities.
Andrew, when did we get AA+?
Maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a couple years, I think.
And so it's a goal. Mike will attest to it, how much of a, how to put this, it's like a exclusive club to get into. AAA is very, very tough to get into. It's almost impossible to get thrown out once you get in there. And so every single finance person I've ever worked with is like Bob Noon's died to be AAA. He could never get there. And so I think if we got there,
All the difference in the borrowing.
it does. We could do an analysis on it, but you save hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially $1 million on a fire station. So
Yeah, we had bonus and all sorts of awesome things at just AA.
Yeah.
In 2019 for our borrowing, it was like 1%.
yeah.
Borrowing for the fire station because of our rating.
So when I put on the TA report that we're researching financial policies, that's one thing that the credit agencies look at. They want to see how your policies are, what your stabilization accounts are, how you're handling your money. So we're working behind the scenes to try to throw a Hail Mary to get AAA before that fire station gets borrowed.
So this slide is another pie graph. The other one you saw was revenue. This one is our appropriations or potential expenditures by function. Again, very consistent from FY25 to FY26. Just kind of seeing a small decrease in general government. Fixed costs stayed the same. Public safety went down 1%. The school went up 1%, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're dealing with just a $39 million budget, that could be a few $100,000. But overall, very consistent. There's really, nothing special, no new initiatives in this budget. And that's kind of how we've been approaching this budget season.
So this is what has really probably stressed Mike and I out the most about this budget. At the very start, I was optimistic of our fixed costs. I think it's probably how everyone is when they start the process out. And then we get hit with just bad news after bad news after bad news. Start with the one good news, our debt is going down, but everything else is going up almost double digits. Retirement has gone up 10%. The possible good news is that we might get fully funded in a few years, so our assessment might go down pretty significantly.
Answer a question on that?
Yep.
I think I read in the budget that it's gone up 30% in the last
3 years.
That sounds correct, yeah.
So they're trying to fully fund it for 2028, correct?
Correct.
Why wouldn't they just move the goalpost a little instead of crushing the towns?
I'm not sure. I think they probably want to get there as quick as they can and get that
On the
balance.
backs of the towns, like that's,
I know. I mean, I don't know what the numbers would be like in Lakeville, but I have seen towns that pay millions and they go down to like 100,000. So we could see some relief in a few years. I just don't know the exact numbers yet. And then obviously the health insurance, which is the biggest piece of the pie up there, has gone up 8% this year, 8 to 9, 8.6, 8.7. We're part of the Gateway Health Group, which is going to be defunct in June of 2026. So we will be trying to find a new place. And this is where kind of the numbers come in. 9%, it's a big number off of 2,413,000. You can kind of see who is on the health plan. We kind of put the number in there. I know it's a topic later tonight. The total cost of boards and committees is $103,986.40. That includes the buyouts and everything else. In like the worst possible world, if everyone took a family plan, we would be hit with a $255,000 bill. Now, you never know what that could happen next year. We have no idea. But that's something that it could rear its head at some point in the future. A recommendation is really to seek an alternative health insurance group for fiscal year 27. Lacey behind the scenes is working like hell to find a new one. There's 4 or 5 really good options, and we're working with the IAC to find the best possible fit. This is the retirement slide I kind of mentioned. We'd be funded by 2028. Unfortunately, it's a 10% increase. So when you see the number 1,796,000, that number could drop fairly significantly in 2028. I think I personally would like to have Plymouth County Retirement Board representative come in and explain all our options, because that number is just unsustainable. 10% every year is just kills us.
So just a quick breakdown of our debt. $1,248,062 will be our debt appropriation for fiscal 26. However, $805,000 of that is exempt debt. So we appropriate for it in the budget, but we automatically raise that dollar value on the recap. So it's a net zero. The difference, $443,062, is the ASWAPs at Windows and Doors project, some state revolving sewer programs, and the septic program. That is regular debt. We have to appropriate for it as an operational cost in the budget and find a funding source for it like any other appropriation.
So here's where we get into the different groups of across the town side. Some of the increases are pretty much all contractual for personnel and services. I've put in a 3% placeholder for department heads / non-union personnel. That would also have to be approved by the select board at some point. Some of the decreases, I took $52,000 out of the facilities manager's maintenance line. As you see in the capital plan, we kind of tried to get creative with the free cash and make it an article and take that out of the operating to go somewhere else. It's kind of a new tactic some communities are starting to use to get money out of their operating accounts. Then I've also taken out, defunded completely the assistant to the TA position. In an ideal world, it's obviously needed. I can't possibly go forward when we're cutting potentially 13 to 20 people across the entire community. For someone not to be in that position right now, I'm not cutting anybody's, and so I rationalize it as it's just, we can come back to it in the fall if our revenues come in better than they are. And then Mike and I, like we said, have gone through line by line in every single budget and tried to find any sort of cuts we could. I think we made, what, 200,000?
Yeah,
We have a full list we can provide.
yeah, it's a pretty long list, but yeah, probably $250,000 in cuts.
So we've started to cut really into the bone of departments, but it's starting to hurt.
Those cuts get you to the deficit of the free cash that you need to use. So without those cuts, it would have been even more.
That's correct.
So, public safety side for the police, this has the placeholder for the dispatchers union increase of $12,095. That agreement is not completely finalized, so that is still obviously subject to change, but we feel pretty good about it. Current staffing is maintained and it hits all the contractual increases. Unfortunately for the fire, at this time, I'm recommending the elimination of the 4 positions that were funded through the American Rescue Plan Act. And then as a result, we've kind of padded the unemployment line to offset this if there's any sort of delay in those fire personnel getting new jobs. Otherwise, we hit contractual increases. And I kind of want to just put it in there, kind of the real need across public safety to fund a lot of their positions. So obviously I took the 4 firefighters that were eliminated and put it under the enhancement section, and then the police want at least 3 personnel of their own. So it kind of shows, and it's not just these departments, it's across the town. I hear this a lot. Every department wants 3 or 4 people, and it's just impossible to do. But, yep.
What's the timeline for the SAFER grant? And has it already started? Is all the process going to try to fund those firefighters for the SAFER grant?
I don't know. My understanding for the SAFER program, if they're funded right now, it doesn't look good if you're gonna apply for it, but I don't know. I'd have to check.
Andrew, what is the difference between what we're short for the 4 firefighters and the increase in the unemployment and potential increase to overtime? Because we have been saving some overtime because of the extra firefighter on each shift, right?
I can get you the number, but it's around, I'd be making it up, but it's around 140. That would be added. So it's like a
difference of 140.
Mm-hmm.
So for $140,000, we can have 4 firefighters more, which could also help revenue. Because the revenue is actually at 1.2 this year, is that correct?
No, it's at $1,050,000. Oh, you mean like revenue for fiscal 25?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're ahead of, so technically the revenue is right there too. If we were to project the revenue a little bit higher, we could cover the cost of the firefighters.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a dangerous game.
I know.
Yeah.
But.
And then obviously the free cash is gonna have to go up kind of as a result. It really just buys us another year. And I think next year the house might come crashing down, just to be honest. And so when we try to hold off the free cash number, we're trying to prepare really for fiscal 27.
Question on the salaries for the firefighters. I think my math's wrong. How much is it for the salary for the 4 firefighters?
It's about $240, I believe.
So when I was looking at Bob's number on what the ARPA funds would cover and how long those funds covered, I thought we had them for longer.
Yeah, when I first came in, Todd did an analysis and he thought we could get through the end of calendar 2025.
And we couldn't because?
I think the personnel that were covered under ARPA just weren't the correct ones, and so some of the higher funded firefighters were under there. So right now we're kind of going probably through July 25th is our current projection of when it would run out.
Is that the intent? If I remember, it was new firefighters were supposed to be. Is that, so how did the higher firefighters get covered and put us in this position?
I don't know.
It happened prior?
I think it was little bit prior than probably one of my first few weeks. Yeah.
So.
We can get into that in the budget here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when we get into the budget for the fire department, I'm gonna just say right now, this is extremely important to me, and I know other select board members have expressed wanting to fund the 4 firefighters. And I would also add that, the callbacks, just to run the ambulance sometimes, are the higher paid firefighters. So versus if you had 4 non-officers working a shift, or I don't know how they do, maybe there's 1 officer on each shift. So I just see a little bit of leeway, and I am absolutely respecting that you're throwing a huge caution to us, on, manipulating the revenue number. But, there's nothing else in stabilization we can take out to fund those firefighter positions and hope, at least do the paperwork at town meeting, and if the money comes in.
But what would we fund it at? Would we fund it at the 240, or would we fund it at the 326 that it ended up being funded at? I just, like, to your point, like, if we're saying for firefighters cost X, it should cost X, and this looks like X plus 20%.
If I remember right, when Leah, Lorraine, and I voted to put the ARPA money through, the concept was, let's get an analysis on what overtime would really look like.
Yep.
Get morale up in the department because they were burning out. And also we thought it was going to last through calendar 25 to get another shot at the SAFER grant.
Yeah.
Right.
But if the money was I don't want to say misused, but if it was paying the wrong people,
That we,
and now it's
we
gone
shot ourselves in
sooner,
the foot.
that's a
Right.
problem.
And there's the unknown. We've had 12 fires in the last 2 months with full recalls. I mean, but that overtime is never going to change for a fire.
No, and I saw that the overtime line absolutely did move down when you moved to the 4 firefighters.
The 4 firefighters.
What? No, it didn't. It shouldn't have. Because we asked him to move it down. He said, no, it's too soon. I don't have the numbers.
The
Maybe in
actuals
use,
moved down?
the
You're talking about
actual.
the actual requested?
The
the
actuals.
actual.
Right, but the allocated did not go
Yes,
down.
no, but the actuals, it actualized, not as ambitiously as we hoped, but
No.
it did still actualize. But yeah, like, I would really love from the
Yeah, I'd
chief.
like to see a lot of numbers.
Yeah, I'd love the chief to come and when he's coming to present his version of the budget,
Yep.
to tell us the story of how it went from one number to another. And, his overtime, and how that ended up working out for him. But
And also, if we could have those numbers, isn't that on the first day of budget?
Yeah.
yeah,
April 9th.
advance, that would be great.
Maybe it'd also be interesting to see like how often was he able to staff those 4 positions in each shift, or how often did somebody call out, have to pull in somebody for overtime, or like.
No, if you remember, I watched the meeting, his speech to the board was he was not going to replace that extra position. on
Like
the-
if there's vacation or
Correct.
something,
Did
he
that
doesn't have to
Yes,
backfill.
did it happen?
Because
That would be
every
good.
time you're at town hall and a call comes in, there's plenty of vehicles going out.
Yes,
So I feel like we're running just as many with what we
And,
had.
definitely what does mutual aid look like? I mean, are we still focusing more of our energy, which I don't think we are.
I haven't heard
but-
the Middleborough thing come up lately. Wasn't that who it was that was
yes.
running us dry?
Yeah.
It
yeah.
was because, the town was supporting, what's the name of that company?
Brewster.
Yeah, Brewster Ambulance, and it was having a lot of times where they weren't available
Yeah.
to residents.
We also have an aging population, and I would expect that number to go up, the calls numbers and so forth should continue to go up, reflecting our older need, the needs of older people. I just have to make a general statement, and forgive me, this is only my first year, second round through this on finance committee, but anytime we're filling a position for any job, to me, it shouldn't come out of any savings. Like, I don't go to my retirement account and pull money out of there to pay for my kids' tuition. I either can afford my tuition or I put less money in the retirement. So as we look forward, I mean, that's something that to me, these 4 people have committed to working for this town. They passed up other opportunities that if they were to switch jobs now and those other communities have to make cuts, which we eventually may as well. I just find it troubling to say to somebody, well, we hope you're going to be here for a year. I mean, my son's a police officer, so it troubles me to think of him having to go and say, well, we funded your position with grant money. So.
But that's exactly what this was ARPA money
That was ARPA.
funded.
Oh, I understand,
So, yeah.
but I think especially now with all the cuts coming around, those of us that are approving this stuff really need to have a good idea of where that money's coming from. If it's grant money, where's it coming from and what it's going to use to pay for? And, you know, frankly, if we had 4 people on there that needed to be on there, why isn't that part of our general?
Well,
I know we're trying to
was-
balance
if
things.
you-
I'm not criticizing you,
Right.
I'm just,
I agree with your statements. If you go back and watch the select board meetings from that time, which I'm sure everybody would love to go do, we said, this is bad fiscal precedent.
Yes. Mhm.
And we told the chief that. And we
Yep.
said, when this money runs out, it's gone. This is an experiment. Show us how we can fund a 4-person shift without this money. Because there was policy changes in the department that he said he could make. There was, savings in the overtime. So the wall's here. We knew this was coming.
yeah.
What did the experiment show us?
Right,
Can
but
we
I'm
do
still
it?
not ready to like give up on it because I do know that it's been at least, I think 18 months, almost 2 years since we've had a rate change. And Medicare, I think, has a rate change coming, a higher reimbursement. So, and these are the things that we need to see, but you're absolutely right, Barbara. But you know what? Sometimes this job is personal. And when you see the call volume, the call volume isn't like this. The call volume is like that.
see,
I mean, there's an estimate that they are going to the urgent care at least every other day.
Yeah.
Sometimes
And
multiple times a day.
And Leah, that's why it's so weird to see the ambulance receipts be flat if indeed we are going and having these calls. For the entire time I've lived in the town, those have been 2 lines that run in a parallel path.
Yeah, but I,
More calls,
Right.
more,
I would love
Ambulance.
to know when if he does give a presentation, what percentage of our fees are coming from Medicare, and that's a huge vulnerability for us right now, and I think we need to understand that.
yep. And the problem is, even though, in my opinion, I don't think it's an option. I think, just like you, if I can't pay for it, I don't buy it. I don't go, if it's something frivolous, I don't go to my savings account, and say, oh, we're just gonna, it's not in our budget, we're gonna blow it. That's not the way, but we're talking firefighters here. We're talking,
And now they've got institutional knowledge, now they know what streets they have to get to, okay.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right, so we'll bring all that back for conversation with the department, so, we can,
And then on the next page,
So I'm gonna just touch on the public works function. So the transfer station the enterprise fund was rescinded in the fall. It's operating as an enterprise fund through June 30th, 2025. Effective July 1, fiscal 26, it will be part of the public works. And we will inherit all of their fees for disposal of solid waste, C&D, stickers, bags. But with that, we will also inherit all of their expenses. So it, as I mentioned earlier, is essentially a net zero. Franklin did a great job at trying to find that sweet spot. Like if he had money in his normal highway budget and now he has the enterprise fund budget that's going to be combined, he was able to find, savings, and he did a great job doing so. And then under Public Works, we also have snow and ice, which is level funded at $135,000. You never really lower your snow and ice because you can legally deficit spend it. And we have multiple capital requests, both to maintain and increase services in town.
and I know maybe it's just me, but with a whole new building coming online for DPW to take care of, we may not need a whole new position in Public Works, but maybe by 2027, isn't that the estimate, Lorraine, for when it's gonna be?
in the fall.
Well, if anyone can do it, Franklin can, he makes $1 into 10 every time we
Yeah,
give
but
him
at
anything.
some point,
But the
Frank,
question,
Frank taught me the first lesson I ever learned on this job. He said to me, Leah, if you want us to do it, you have to give us the resources. So we're gonna have a whole new building, and I know he could use more people anyways, so in case I'm not here in 2027, please fund a new position.
well, I mean, that does speak to though, for a new building coming online, what are the operational costs of that going to be? And that's probably what, FY 28 at that point? That's gonna probably be, because we're not getting rid of a building, we're just adding one.
Oh, for the fire department,
Yeah.
it's gonna be about $300,000.
So that's another chunk of
I
change to
checked
come up with.
10 different municipalities,
Yep.
minimum, and that doesn't include, contracts, like service contracts for things.
Yeah,
So-
that's a big one.
We're
Yeah.
gonna work.
I like to sit on my iPad at night and look at service contracts
No,
for town.
I've been part of a few big builds in my previous town, and it's very expensive operational wise in the
Yeah.
new footprint.
Yeah.
And Maureen, you and Lorraine probably remember when when this building came online, we were approaching really good days with tons of new growth, so
Yes.
even though we didn't fully fund a whole operational building that year, we certainly were able to do it.
But we didn't, we get some savings from not having to have trailers out back for the
Right.
police officers to be in. From, if you remember the old police station, we had to rent trailers because it was unusable. They couldn't use the water to even wash their hands. Yeah, we use it till it falls
rooms
apart here in Lake.
Rooms were blocked off due to black mold, yeah.
Yeah.
This one is pretty straightforward. We level expensed and did contractual increases across the board, for all 3 departments.
Oh, culture and recreation, we added the park enterprise under this function as well. So, library contractual increases, level expenses or level service. There's several important capital facility improvements that you'll see going forward. And then the Park Enterprise Fund has a retained earnings balance of $45,203, which they plan on utilizing. We've worked with them on some opportunities to increase revenues, and we did for fiscal 26 remove the $17,500 subsidy, which they were able to balance their budget without it. So,
So, question, Mike.
yes.
I'll ask the unpopular question. What is your plan now for direct and indirect costs?
Well, we talked about it around January, I think. And we did kind of a draft of what it could potentially look like. And then we kind of got into budget season. It stalled out a little bit, but it's a great point because I think that there's a lot of costs, a lot of money that could come into the general fund based off what employees in town hall are doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of, are we going to shortchange the park enterprise fund if we, bill them for everything we're doing on the town side. So I know there's a small indirect that Todd and Ari and previous employees had built in, but it's not reflective of what a true indirect cost should be. So,
I feel like, not following the state law practices on that are causing us to probably cut more from the general side than we would have to, whether it's a position or services or whatever it might be.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think our estimate was somewhere in the neighborhood of $90,000. That would definitely fund a position or two if it was coming into the general fund.
Right.
And it's a funny concept, right? When I first started here 4 months ago, you're giving a 17.5 subsidy and then you're taking in a $5,700 indirect cost. So you're kind of like giving them a bailout and then asking them for money, but you're kind of checking the indirect cost box. So I understand why it was being done, because if someone asks you, you're charging an indirect, you can technically say yes, but it's not where it should be.
And you can't get blood from a stone either. They were running into the red, so
Yeah.
like getting any indirect costs is difficult in a situation like that.
It is. Yeah.
But I would fix it then.
So this is, it's been touched upon, 50% of our budget. I can't figure out the minimum contribution changes, but I'm sure someone can in the state, but it's killing us, really. So you see, we went down 13 students from Old Colony, and our initial increase was a $75,000 increase. I don't know how that really jives, but it does. Luckily, we came down to 22,000 for Old Colony. Bristol County has gone up 5 students, which is a $75,000 increase. Luckily, Norfolk went up a very small amount, but there is a possible new student. So that runs about 30,000.
Yep. Okay.
So that's good.
Touch more.
Yeah, what about that was the first thing I'm like, do you remember the $75,000 transportation cost?
There may be, I mean, we'll have to see, but those students are getting older. They might be able to drive shortly. I think one's gonna be a senior or a junior, so there's a chance that my person might be able to drive, and it's a sibling duo.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to take the loser cruiser if I could.
So some good news, some bad news.
In Brockton.
And then also the big one is Free Lake. Their initial increase, ask was 1.6. I think it's come down to about 1.2 or so. And that's mostly because of insurance increases and the teacher negotiations. Just for reference, last year, it was an increase of 661,000, which took off about close to 400,000. This year, off the 1.6, we took off close to 900,000. We are now sitting at 726,649. So we took a lot out of the schools this year, unfortunately. But we gave our entire 2.5%.
There's also declining enrollment.
Declining enrollment, but the counter argument they've kind of given us is there's increased needs for the students they do have, special education wise, so I don't know where the balance is on that.
We'll have to see where the numbers fall on that.
They also had 3 teachers that were funded through the
ESSER.
funds.
Which we asked
as well,
them to
and
look at for this current budget. We asked them not to wait till.
Well, should we do that again? Because we know we're gonna have additional cuts coming for next year. You're talking about us having a really rough year for 26, 27.
They're cutting those positions because they're not funded by ESSER this year.
No, I know what you're saying, but I mean, for example, IEP funding, right? Those kind of costs could come up for the next year, if not this year, in the middle of the year.
Correct.
Yep.
Can we get some idea of what exposure that might be?
Yeah.
It's hard.
I asked the question,
Yeah.
but I don't know. They don't know.
Yeah, and it's hard because you could get a new student in over the summer that needs special schooling and everything, so.
I'm talking more about our money, the source of funds, where the money's coming from.
Oh, okay.
Because I know there's a lot of budget changes going on all over the place, but it's hard to make sense of how it's going to affect us and our local taxes.
Yeah, I think they're still digging out on, how that formula is gonna work out. Did we ever get a total count of students for Free Lake? I know we've asked for it a couple times.
We did get,
There was.
you did send something not too long
Yeah, but
ago.
that's just 40S. That was just, no, the 40S count they gave for, they're just giving the count for the ones affected for the bonus.
I think Chris might have it because he's got the budget book.
Oh, just the amount of students. Yeah, the total
students.
total student count.
They have a graph. I don't have the exact number. I can infer that it's maybe around, I don't have an exact number because I'm trying to read off of a graph that doesn't have very good detail, but.
Do you have that assessment sheet Jack gave us at the last meeting? It was at the top.
Oh.
Flip was at the top.
And this is the enrollment as,
Yes.
now, you're looking at 10/1/25.
Yes. I'm sorry, what was the question?
As compared to 20,
I can
24.
tell you the enrollment, the budget is based off of 2,620.
Do we know what the year before was?
because he didn't give that specific information.
Yeah, I can look at his graph here, but I can't, it's hard to kind of, he doesn't have the details, so I can't get the exact numbers off that. We can
Down
certainly,
10, go down 30.
we can get it, so.
So we have been, not really notified, but right now they potentially would lose 13 to 20 teachers with this number.
So that number that they said was 13 to 20, but 8 of it was, they're not being removed. These are people that are retiring.
No.
Yeah, they had some that were
There
retiring.
was one.
They had 3 that were the ESSER funded and the other ones were retiring.
I'm only
Or-
aware of one retirement.
Okay, or
that
that there
number.
wasn't a need for their position because of the change in the demographics.
I don't know about
can't say
that.
that exactly, but.
I don't recall
I don't know
that.
I don't remember the number
Yeah.
then.
Yeah,
I
I
know-
can't say that exactly. They, mostly what they're saying is that due to declining enrollment, there is a certain, you
Yes.
know. Right, and the contract still isn't decided, so.
Right, that's a huge unknown.
Yeah.
Is
Huge
the negotiated. This budget assumes a 3%
3.
on average, right? So if anything higher, my guess is additional, they'll have to do additional reductions.
And I think what Jack told us, every percent is about 220,000. So if they came in at like 4, we'd go through like another 220 or something like that.
Oh, I think every
Oh.
percent,
Is all closer
year?
to $1 million.
I think every percent is a quarter of a million.
Quarter, I don't know.
I believe every percent above 3 is a quarter of a million.
That sounds about right, yeah.
So here are some of the capital, that we're gonna recommend. It's about a total of 1.4 million. The one I'm most excited about is the town website possibility. We have a pretty terrible website right now. And the message is always to get communication increased through there, and it's just almost impossible, just with the limitations of the website.
Any chance for grant on that? Or an ADA type of grant?
So we
because
are-
of the accessibility factors?
We are gonna have an ADA component to it. But I doubt they would cover something like the website.
So
Another,
you can just slap an ADA tool on top of what we already have without
Correct.
redoing the whole thing.
I don't think the state knows that.
Now they do.
the big one is the library roof, needs to be replaced. Hasn't been touched since it was installed about 20-something years ago. So
Not a
that,
30-year roof, I guess?
It's so short for
I think something happened to the warranty.
part of it, yeah.
No one wants to spray some cork up there?
so yeah, we can get to the next slide. I think generally in the past, Frank has asked for about 375,000 in additional money on top of the Chapter 90. Unfortunately, we only are gonna recommend 100,000. Some of the better news is that, Chapter 90 for Lakeville has gone up pretty significantly due to the millionaire's tax. I think it's generally around 400,000. We're gonna get about close to 7. So a pretty big sizable increase. So we'll be able to do quite a few roads next year.
Andrew, is there any way to accelerate this flood permit removal? Is there any brownfields type grants you're aware of? I'm just sick of seeing that mountain.
We can try. It's just an expensive, we could put millions and millions into it and
Yeah.
not make a dent.
Just be nice to see it gone.
Yeah, we can certainly research that.
I'm just afraid that like the cost per tonnage or whatever is gonna go up every year. It slows and slows.
It does, yep. The 3 you see on the left, the compactor, the LED light replacement, and facilities repairs at the transfer station. Those are gonna be recommended to be used with retained earnings, which would come at the special before the annual town meeting. So that would pretty much run out the retained earnings in that account. So that would stay out of the free cash and capital stabilization components. And then the big future budget drivers. As we've said, the fixed costs are going up significantly. It's also been touched on, the new fire station will have a very big operating price tag. I think it will need a new guy, but I think is kind of what you've seen in the presentation, we don't have the money for a new guy. And I don't think we will over the next 2 years either. The Old Colony Regional Vocational School vote is coming up on November 18th right now. And that'll be a one-day election. The thing that is good and bad is that there'll be more students that can attend that school. I think it's gonna be about 775 students. I think right now we're about 550. When you do the math though, we'd get maybe 30 or 40 new kids there. They're gonna phase that in. So you're not gonna see all extra 250 kids coming to the school at the same time. But when that is fully built out, we're gonna have to cover the assessment of potentially 30 or 40 new kids. And obviously, we're gonna have to cover the debt exclusion potentially, which is in the region of 30 to 40 million as well. That's a big chunk of change, right on back of the fire station. And so, as we'll get into the next slide, an override's gonna be very difficult. Go back to the prior one, sorry. And then, obviously, the Free Lake School District came out with a facility master plan. They haven't had any capital the last few years. We're just waiting for that to hit us. So I don't know what that amount's gonna be right now, but it could be a huge chunk of change as well. And as you see all these projects getting funded, we're gonna start running into, debt limit concerns. So we might not even be able to afford some of this stuff. And then our collective bargaining agreements, all of them will expire next June. So I'm not aware of any major price tags to those, but you never quite know until you get in the room with different people. And the big slide. So obviously, as we've kind of demonstrated, there's a huge budget sustainability issue in Lakeville. I think there's gonna have to be a serious conversation of an operational override next year or the year after, unless serious considerations are made to limit spending and potentially cuts to avoid an override. Mike will always remind me that just because you propose an override doesn't mean it passes. So we could propose one, and if it fails, then it's obviously major issues. So we might be forced to make cuts. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. Another thing we could do is potentially a spending freeze for non-essential spending. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge budget saver, but I think every dollar is going to count.
What was that?
A spending freeze of non-essential spending. And so it's not a huge savings, but I think every dollar will count in fiscal 27. So I'd like to save any dollar I can now for later. So there are, like, it's been kind of mentioned, we could use more free cash or this or that, but eventually that money runs out. It gets compounded every year. That's why I'm trying to make the cut to my position, the cut to different things now, because next year that position might get cut anyways. So unless we get an override, which I can get the stat, I think it's only 17% of overrides pass. A lot of local towns are trying to propose them. Hanover, Hanson, the big one that's kind of scared people is Duxbury. They put in for like a $6 million one and it failed. Now they're cutting 40 positions. So just because we potentially propose one doesn't mean it's going to pass. Yep.
I was just gonna ask, I mean, and that's not something you're doing to just get us through 1 year. I'm assuming you guys are forecasting if we do it, it needs to be sustainable.
Yeah, they definitely recommend you only do one maybe every 5 to 10 years. Some towns, they run into trouble, they'll get a big influx of cash and then they spend it. And then they're back for an override in 2 years. Overrides are obviously more expensive than debt exclusions. So there has to be a balance of what you do and how much money you go for. There's also the potential public safety override, a schools override. You can be targeted with them, but they're very complicated to do. Generally, I think the DOR, Department of Revenue, recommends 8 to 12 months of planning before you do it. A lot of outreach has to go into it, demonstrate the importance to the community. We're just a little bit in a tough situation with some of the debt exclusions lately to then come back for an override. It's just, we'll do it. It's just,
So
we have
did it
to.
last time. We had the override last time, so, I initiated the override last time as a citizen. And then Sarah, Cusino actually picked up the mantle, and it was a grassroots initiative. And it ended, everyone said, oh, no one's gonna have an override in Lakeville. Guess what? They had an override in Lakeville. For the 3-4 years previous, there was what you would probably call austerity that had happened, where they had 4 years of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 for the schools, and they had cut how many positions back in 2009? Like something 40 something positions. So it was a flip on that, and that had happened, but it was a grassroots initiative. It was not
right. But you know, it's a different scene here. I mean, over the last, you know, 3-4 years, the select board has brought forward, you know, the warehouse, which would have been, again, no one wants a warehouse. The reason why, you know, select boards and whatever support them are because we know we have to bring income in. Years ago, living in a rural community was cheap. Living in a rural community now is not cheap because we have to pay for everything out of our taxes. So, and I know everyone here really wants to work on some economic development, but we know there's only so many storefronts, there's only so many.
Small business is not going to move the needle for, you know, what we need.
Right.
And that's, you know, we've been saying that for the last few years. If you want to be a better community, then you have to bear the burden on your shoulders.
Right, and that's
There's
why,
no other,
if next year, right, it gets to the point where we have to institute a local tax, there's again another, you know, place where we're gonna get tax people for living in this community, and I mean, it just,
It's painful.
It is.
It's very
it is,
painful.
because I don't wanna price someone out who's been living here for 40 years.
And you also
But-
don't want to be the lowest for safety. You don't want to be the lowest, you know, for funding. We're in the bottom 10% of all of Massachusetts for per pupil spending. It's not something anyone, you know, should be proud of.
we're in the
here.
top 50 for the Boston area for quality, so we're spending it well.
We're spending it well. But, you know, there is that component that we had spent so many years being so ultra conservative that, you know, maybe ultra conservative isn't always the right thing to do when at the end of the rope it ends up, you know, biting you in the butt. But I know everyone here is committed to the
Well,
least
this
amount
board
of
has-
impact on the taxpayer.
Right, this board has, you know, made a commitment to putting together economic development committee, and I think, you know, we have a town administrator and an accountant who can, you know, stay with it and, you know, steer the ship, so to speak, and it's gonna have to be done, and the folks are gonna have to come out and tell us what they want.
I don't know if folks are aware, some of the research I've done, Lakeville is in the bottom 15% for our tax rate, for our property tax, I think. And for the average family tax bill, we're in the bottom 40%.
But what that doesn't take into consideration is we don't have services. So we don't have trash, we don't have water, we don't have a lot of the services that other towns have.
Water would not be part of real estate taxes in
You
other
are right.
towns.
You are right.
Sorry, I just have
Yeah,
a point of
no,
clarification.
but we don't have a lot of the services that some
Yeah.
other towns do. So even though we do have a lower rate, we kind of deliver a little bit less as well.
It's like having no services, so.
True that.
I think the bottom line is that we're gonna have to meet and make tough decisions. I think if you see my budget, I kind of ripped it apart. Pains me to do it. I think it's needed. I think we put together a pretty top-notch finance team with Mike, Robbie Alford, Erica Correa, Lacey Marshall. So I think we're gonna be meeting on how to find a solution before you guys even tell us. So we stress ourselves out about it, so I think we're gonna keep doing that to put ourselves in a good spot. Because fiscal 26, people thought we were gonna need an override. Kind of staved it away, at least another year. So maybe we can do it again, but we'll have to find solutions.
I have a super unpopular question.
Yep.
I know you guys went to the well and you're looking at positions. Have we looked at the entire town and what our staffing needs are of the town. Has it changed? Will it change with the new improvements we've made? You know, will it change with anything that we're doing in the next year or so for staffing? Like, is there a possibility that we're bloated anywhere in town? Like, it's super unpopular, but at the same time, it's a necessary conversation.
My hope is the cost and comp study will kind of tell us that question. I kind of think we're probably going to be told that we don't pay anyone enough, but it might tell us also that we have too many bodies in certain departments.
To properly plan the potential for an override, even if at the end of the day we say we don't want to propose it, is that all done in-house, or do you need resources from DOR? Like, do we have to figure in any funding for that kind of investigation if necessary?
It'd be an all hands on deck for the next few months, or in general, but I think DOR would stand by.
Yeah, I was part of one override in my previous municipality in 2015 that failed by 18 votes. So
18?
yeah, people were laid off the very next morning. So yeah, you're gonna bring DLS in, DOR, even reach out to other towns to see what their approach was like, you know, comparable towns to our size and demographics. But yeah, it'll definitely be all hands on deck for sure.
Yeah. I think my concern about the override is that we don't really know where our budgetary is going to end up. At the end of this year, we may have a better idea of what's going to be happening as far as state and federal funding. If we go in front of the town today and say we want an override for whatever reason, I think that's problematic to try and go back a year later, just throwing it out there. It's a very uncertain time.
That's why they generally recommend 8 to 12 months, because you don't want to screw it up, and
Yeah.
it can be. You're making a lot of assumptions on different lines and
Yeah.
services, and to do it in a few months is very tough. Because like I said, you want to do it for like 5 to 10 years, and
Yeah.
If the next 3 3/4 years are as turbulent as the last 3 months have been, I don't know that we'll ever know things are steady, honestly.
they recommend when you do an override, don't really hire anyone,
Right.
because then you overspend and then you're like, oh, we ran out of money already?
Yeah, no, and they also recommend you can't do any building projects, so.
There's that too.
Yes.
We're also in this like treading water phase. The last few years have all been like level services, even though the town has exploded population wise.
Yep.
And we're probably still a little shallow in some departments.
Yeah, departments aren't shy of telling us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I know we always focus on public safety, but like, what about the other areas?
There's pressure.
Well,
all
we are
over.
not, there's one office that has 3 people, the treasurer's office. Otherwise, we're a department head and 1 full-time in almost every other office.
There's definitely a lot of burnout concerns, and people told me that, but
I believe it.
it's no real solution, unfortunately.
I wanted to ask the finance committee, last year we did a budget recap after we did all the department, you know, after the budget presentation and the department discussions. Is that something you'd like to entertain again this year?
Yes.
I would say yes.
Okay, all right, so I think that would be a good thing, and then, you know, we can have these discussions, and at that time, I guess we can vote the budget and, you know, what we're gonna do, so. And then that money tree that you planted and put the, you know, that, what is it, Miracle Grow? Will be ready by then, so by May, we should see some more green. That would be lovely. But I have to say that Andrew, Michael, Lacey, you did a really bang-up job putting this together. I've sat through quite a few budget presentations in my career, and I have to say I probably understood this one the best.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Nice job.
When you see it from 20 feet away, you see some errors you made too, so.
Don't worry, Andrew, I've been writing them down.
We're very hypercritical, so I think what you see here is just a base of what you're gonna see in the next few years.
I appreciate how conservative you've been. I think the town has prided ourselves on our low tax rate and our, you know, very frugal spending, and it's clear that you've embraced that, because you've only been with us a year now.
No,
Not
5 months.
even 6 months.
A really nice job, Andrew, thank you.
Mike's been here even less.
Yeah, combined, you
Really?
haven't even been here a year. Right?
Nice job, both of you.
All right, if there's no other business,
Culture and recreation's numbers missing from the pie chart.
Yeah, it's because the.
I know we'll be digging more and more at a fine-tuned
Is it
level
less
when
than a
we
percent?
hear from our department heads, but I guess I'd like to say that if there's any, because now that you've had a chance to review, the budget, books on your own, or you will continue to review them.
That's a good idea.
If there's anything that you'd like to see from the departmental level, would you please let Andrew, know, so that he can alert the department heads to be prepared to speak to it? So that, we're not having a 3-hour meeting, on each night. At least they can get prepared and be able to respond to some of the questions you may have.
Yeah, and I think for me, just the biggest one was the fire department and the ambulance receipts. I just want to understand, not just the numbers, but the numbers behind the numbers.
And Andrew, we had talked about it before, but my concern was trying to understand, I knew about the firemen and the ARPA funds, but what other grant money and what are the sources of that funds and what are they going to pay for each department? Because I have no idea. You guys have done so much to bring everything together with all these pieces, but I think we need to understand what our vulnerabilities are. Because if we had to step up and pay for this ourselves, we should at least have some idea of where we're going.
Just offhand, I don't think we're too exposed.
Good.
But the issue is, and I always ask Senator Roderick's, like, how's the budget looking? He's like,
Yeah.
ask me tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because they get new direction every day from up top, and
Yeah.
they're
gonna have to do a little cutting.
That's unfortunate for us too, so.
Yeah,
Potentially.
They're not cutting where we want them to cut.
Right.
Yeah, I think I heard Mass Health is probably their biggest concern,
Yeah.
which doesn't really affect us, but it does for the residents.
I think downstream revenue, yeah. Okay.
All right. I'm gonna put my seat back.
Oh,
Is it 8:08?
Yeah, I'll, entertain a motion to adjourn the finance committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Jankowski, aye.
And Blogger, aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was really good to see you all. We'll see you on the ninth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I heard today on the radio that the state is going to, there's these houses where the children, small group homes for children who are really mental health issues. I happen to have a girlfriend who has one of those. Literally, a child started having major behavioral issues by the time she was 3. Could not be a general population.
Local service doesn't
But the state is going to cut those funds.
No new enhancements.
People that are citizens, you know what I'm saying, like go there.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
I called Roberts about it because and LakeCAM.
Now you gotta put those all back, right?
About write letters to the state about that.
Yeah, were you here for that discussion, or did you come in after that? Bob Marshall was here.
Oh, he was, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what,
yeah, so they're gonna, there was legislation going on.
I'm on LakeCAM, I know.
Oh, you went.
No, we're not actually in
And their
recess.
treasurer.
Oh.
Spending a lot of time right now.
Okay, yeah. no, Bob-
Everybody-
Bob presented.
The select board is still in session.
Get out.
Yes.
Have fun with all that. I am very rude right now because, yeah, we still have like a ton of agenda items. All right. It was really good to see you. Thank you.
Where are we going next to the old flippy chart?
We are on agenda item number 9. So I'd like to invite you up to the table, please. Thank you. So, our office received a request from, Twisted Growers, one of, our current HCA, businesses, to do a brief presentation, on a suggestion or a request from this board. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could just state your name for the record.
Sure. I'm Phil Silverman. I'm an attorney for the company. It's actually 2 companies. It's Twisted Growers, and then there's a separate affiliate called TG Delivery. It's a separate delivery company. And you are?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Bethany Sirota
From the company. No,
Okay,
we'll
great.
get to them. There was some materials that I sent over. Did anybody get those regarding this? Yes. Oh, that's great. Okay. If anybody needs one, I can provide it. But, all right. Pull this out. So again, I'm Phil Silverman, and what we're here to talk about is two separate items. I'm going to start with the delivery company. What we're seeking to do is operate a marijuana, what's called a delivery courier and delivery operator company at 415 Millennium Drive. That's currently the site where there's a cultivation and product manufacturing facility that's operating by Twisted Growers. And so this is a partnership. Under Massachusetts law, delivery companies have to be social equity companies. So Bethany's a 51% owner of this company, along with the owner of the Twisted Growers operation as well. And the two companies sort of work hand in hand. You know, a lot of the product that Bethany's delivery company would deliver and sell is going to be produced by Twisted Growers, and Twisted Growers gain sort of a distribution outlet as a result of having this company, which is important, and I'll sort of get to that. But just brief history, about 3 years ago, the town put out a request for proposals for marijuana companies, and this was one of the ones that we submitted a request. And I think what happened is, I think the town was having some issues and concerns about marijuana facilities, especially I think on Kenneth Welch Drive, and parking and water usage and those sorts of things. And so when I was sort of inquiring, well, what about our submission? I think there was a desire to take a little pause. But I think, you know, maybe now, having seen what's happened in the industry's changed a little, this was a good time to sort of try to get back before you and talk about this company.
Yes. So I remember both of you very well. I was there that day. It was also to do with all the changes with the host community agreements by the legislatures. So here we were ready to sort of say, hey, welcome to Lakeville. And then all of a sudden, I believe it was shortly after that, the news came out that, you know, the host community agreements are all going to be different. And we had so many. And I think you were both part of it at some point that we were trying to figure out what to do with all the existing. So.
You're not alone, and it makes sense. And in fact, they changed again, you know, about a year ago. So there's been a lot of change, but we're seeing hopefully some stability now in terms of going forward. So this is probably a decent time to revisit. Just so we remember, you know, what a delivery courier is kind of like DoorDash. You go and, you know, a retailer gets an order to be delivered, and this company would go pick up the order and deliver it to a consumer. A delivery operator is a little different. They buy their own product. They have a website. People order from them. They warehouse it. It would be over at 415 Millennium Drive. And then, you know, it's delivered to the consumer that way. So there's two different models, and this company would be looking to do both. It's probably a good time to let Bethany introduce herself and just tell you a little bit about herself and what her plans are.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for having us. My name is Bethany Sirota. I am an attorney by trade, but I work in healthcare administration. I think this is a great opportunity, especially in this region, for a delivery company. I've done a bit of research, and I know that this is a great opportunity zone for that. So I'm very excited about working with Dom and Bill, Twisted Growers.
Thank you. In terms of the facility, you know, there's already, you know, as I mentioned, the cultivation facility. This would take up a separate 2,500 square foot space within that facility. Probably use, you know, 3 or 4 parking spaces at the facility. And it's really pretty minimal impact in terms of, you might see a delivery vehicle coming and going 3 or 4 times a day. Is it possible that if, the delivery aspect picked up a lot, you might see more? Yeah, maybe 5 or 6 times a day, 6 or 7 times a day. Hard to believe it would be a lot more than that. Usually if there's going to be deliveries, they're sort of packaged together. The vehicle goes out once and carries about, 10 to 15 deliveries. And so there's not going to be back and forth all day. As I said, it's fairly low impact in terms of, the site. All of the, the requirements that you're used to seeing in a marijuana facility are present here. It's the same types of security, the same types of the cameras that you're used to seeing. There's GPS tracking systems in the vehicles here. So it's really pretty well done, and it hasn't been an enormous security issue as this is rolled out in Massachusetts over the last 5 years. The other benefit, I think, that I wanted to mention for the town is this is a business that can generate revenue, and it doesn't just take revenue from your existing retail. Right now there's deliveries that are going on in Lakeville, Massachusetts. By and large, they're probably from delivery companies that are hosted by communities outside of Lakeville. And so when they make a sale in Lakeville, the 3% sales tax goes to those other communities, okay? This is a company, I'm sure they'll want to be doing deliveries in Lakeville, but they're also going to want to expand to southeastern Massachusetts. And there's not a lot of other delivery companies in this area. So the hope is that this expands to other communities surrounding Lakeville, and you're taking in 3% tax revenue on those deliveries from the other communities. So I think there's an opportunity there, for significant revenue growth. So that's TG Delivery. Maybe I should just take questions on that one first. Is that?
The first thing that comes to mind is I know you have the permitting authority is the ZBA, and they've already gone through and approved, obviously, Twisted Growers facility in the capacity that it's operating now.
Yep.
I guess my question is, now you're changing usage of the building, so there's going to have to be another visit, I'm assuming?
No question. I think it's probably a separate special permit, but we'll certainly abide by what the board prefers, whether it's an amendment. It is a separate company, so I think it probably has to be a separate permit.
So basically, you're asking us to enter into a host community agreement for the purposes of this particular service that's in front of us this evening.
Yep.
You still have to go through what you need to go through with the state to be awarded a license, or?
That's correct.
Okay.
The host community agreement, as it's always been, is sort of the gateway to the state process. You can't get a state license. So we would be doing the state process and the local permitting process both at the same time.
Okay.
Question, if I may?
Yes.
This is new to me, right? This is the
Sure.
first one we've had, so apologize to the silly questions, but
yeah.
What's the benefit to TG Delivery for looking for both a courier and an operator license if they're actually planning on being in the same facility as Twisted Growers where production is happening?
Yeah, it's two different sources. There's going to be some, there's obviously some overlap. I get it. The two companies can sort of work out, it's in TG Delivery's interest in some ways to do a lot of delivery operator because, it's all of their revenue, as opposed to, doing courier, which is just a small delivery fee. But that's something they're going to be working out with Twisted Growers because, they have their own needs and they're going to want to, and Twisted Growers can't do delivery on its own because it has to be a social equity company. So there's some bargaining leverage there between the two companies.
Would it also, and maybe not, since Twisted Growers, as I understand, is a 49% holder in TG Delivery, would that allow TG Delivery to say, we have our Twisted Growers line, but we can also buy product from others if they
They're
want
going to. The average consumer likes a lot of different types of products, and Twisted Growers only, cultivates and manufactures a certain number of them.
Gotcha.
So they're going to want to be.
So they could house those different lines than if they have the operator license.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
I know when we had met 3 years ago, there was a, potential sales that you're predicting.
Yeah.
Any idea?
I hesitate because if I think back to what we were thinking before,
Yep.
I think those numbers, you know, they were all over the place in a lot of ways. You know, I view this as probably a $3 million a year, something along those lines, you know, so that's probably $90,000 in revenue if it works out to that.
So that's combined or just the delivery?
That's just the delivery.
Okay.
We're gonna get to the retail piece in a minute. But I'll try to be conservative and say 2 to 3 million.
And then just for the benefit of the rest of the board, last time we had a lot of questions about safety and security, and we spent a lot of time talking about that. And I mean, it seems like a lot of that is being answered just by the pairing up with facility.
You've got a secure facility as it is. The CCC's been pretty successful in terms of keeping all of these places safe and secure. You don't see a lot of security issues at any of them. So, and the history now that we've seen, delivery is not new to Massachusetts at this point. It's been around for four years, I think. So, you know, it really, there's been very few negative incidents.
Anybody else?
Good at the moment.
Okay.
All right, we'll go to the other one then. Okay. So this is regarding retail. In 2021, when we first came before the board, we were proposing to do cultivation manufacturing in the facility at 415 Millennium, and we were going to do a retail at 200 Millennium. And the town actually gave us separate host community agreements to do both of those. And then time has gone on, and, you know, the Twisted Growers has sort of been in a position of trying to sort of see where the market went as it was building out its cultivation facility. And what they figured out was they don't need the amount of cultivation space they were originally thinking they were going to need. The industry, there's a lot of cultivators, and we've seen cultivators going out of business, unfortunately, at a fairly rapid pace. So this company has actually done pretty well. They've developed a lot of wholesale relationships out there so far, but it's really, it would really be beneficial to have a distribution outlet. In addition to the delivery company, having a retail would be, very beneficial to this company. And so, but the company is looking at it and saying, why do I want to operate two different facilities right near each other? There's probably a lot of benefits to consolidating this all at 415 Millennium. And so that's what we're really asking for today, is to try to gain a bit of efficiency by having it all at 415 Millennium. Again, this is something that is going to have to go back to the planning board, because I think it raises, this parking, and there is ample parking or space to create parking space on this site, so that's not going to be an issue, but that's something we're going to have to talk to the planning board about, undoubtedly. No, it's not. Is it the ZBA? ZBA,
Yeah.
Apologies. Those issues are going to have to be worked out as well. But again, this is a situation where we don't think that we are sort of cannibalizing your other retails here. We actually think there's a separate market here that isn't being served right now. There's the other places are on Kenneth Welch. This is up near Route 44. And please.
We don't have any other retail.
Nothing.
You did?
Nope.
No.
Never opened.
No, we never have.
It was originally at 310, a spot for retail, but then that never happened.
It never happened.
There is
I
one right down
stand
the street.
corrected.
Well, I just wanted a bigger piece of the pie.
We're not cannibalizing anybody
Bigger
then.
piece of the pie.
And again, that's why,
No, it's actually an easy adjustment.
that's why we had done the request for the proposals. So,
Okay.
Yeah, because we were potentially, but then.
They just didn't materialize.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah.
All right. So basically what you have going on right now then is there's a place up on 44 in Middleborough called Panacea.
Yep.
Okay. It's taking all of your revenue.
Yes.
Okay. There's a swath from there over to Raynham. Raynham doesn't have retail either. That there's a lot of consumers there, and obviously now, as you tell me, in Lakeville, who are going elsewhere. And so the idea is that, we want to basically start up this benefits Twisted Growers, obviously as a distribution outlet, but we think there's quite a bit of revenue there. And before you ask it, I'm going to tell you, I think that's probably, you know, because I think it's an underserved market, I think it's another $3 to $4 million probably that
Well, there is a
could be
new
generated.
one that's just opened, I'm not sure if you know, right on the Berkeley line.
Okay, yeah.
But that's, I don't even know if that one's open yet, but there's
It's
a,
next to my Dunkin' Donuts.
yes, it is next to your Dunkin'.
Okay, but I'm just sort of thinking in the map in my head, I'm not sure it really even, you know, gets in the way of the market that I'm thinking of. I mean, maybe some people will go there, but
And, you know,
I think there's an opportunity for the town here.
Yeah, in case it doesn't show, I was always a fan, but then with the whole change, for the retail, but then with the whole changes in the HCA's, and we had so many to address, we sort of got a little
I get it.
overwhelmed with all that.
I think the good news, by the way, is because I represent some other companies that do business in Lakeville, that worked out with your council an HCA that's going to be acceptable to the CCC, I hope, because that hasn't been the easiest thing over time. So I couldn't have put it better.
Mr. Silverman, I
Sure.
wanted to ask you, is this an adult use or medical?
This is adult use.
Okay.
Yeah, medical is a tough, I mean,
Yeah, it's a tough market, but.
it's a tough
yeah.
market, yeah.
All right, so this will be adult use. Okay.
I should introduce Nicole Costanzo from Lakeville Law.
Evening room.
You know, I looked over and I saw you sitting there, I'm like, oh, hi. Sorry about that.
I think I've only ever seen you via Zoom. And we all look different via Zoom.
Nicole and I
Thank you
know
for
each
coming.
other very well. We do this all over the state, so.
So we have two requests in front of us this evening, so we could vote to approve the just vote to move forward with these agreements, in which case, we would be drafting the HCA's to support each of those, business types, correct? And then the rest of it would fall into play. Is that pretty much how it would roll if we were just?
So the board could vote tonight, but I would recommend that the board defer its vote and just maybe get a sense of what you're feeling, as we are still navigating some issues with the other HCs until we're able to finalize those and see how they play out. Also, there are 3 different types of establishments that have been discussed tonight. You have retail, delivery courier, and delivery operator. To be clear, there is a retail sales tax that does attach to the brick and mortar retail store, right? The delivery operator model, as you've just heard, it's really a warehouse model. So that's, I say, think of Amazon when you're thinking of a delivery operator. They purchase wholesale, they warehouse at the facility, and they deliver out. So Lakeville would be the point of sale. So you would see the retail sales tax for the delivery operator. The delivery courier model, however, again, that is more of an Uber Eats Grubhub model. And so the municipality that would see the retail sales tax is going to be the municipality that houses the retail store, right? So if you're just having the delivery courier locate here, but the courier isn't picking up from a store that's sold in Lakeville, Lakeville won't see that excise tax. That'll be at, the community that housed that retail store. So there are 3 different models, different things for the board to consider. And again, I do know that you are still navigating some other issues with your host community agreement. So I would just recommend to get a sense of the board's feeling and then just defer a vote until we're able to negotiate those other host community agreements and craft something that works for the town, works for the commission, and then you can decide how best to proceed for the town.
I think that's a good recommendation. Does the board have anything else that they wanted to bring up?
Are we talking about our sense at least tonight, or?
Like, if we're talking about our sense, where else would we talk about our
Well,
sense besides here?
yeah, I mean, I always thought this town should have focused on retail in the first place, but a lot of people were scared of, oh, marijuana's getting our borders. It doesn't stop at the town line. It's very-
1,000%.
Like, it never made sense. So, yeah, I would like to explore further.
Plus 1,000.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been, you know, as soon as we got word that the changes were coming for our existing host community agreements, you know, I've always wanted retail sales because, as you heard us talking before, we need economic development in this town. And I think we need to pursue it. But I'm also very happy to see you back. I'm glad you stuck it out. Yeah, because it was, I believe I still have all the presentation materials from the last time.
Okay,
it seems
great.
like, yeah, solid information, solid people.
Are you operating somewhere else?
I'm not.
So this would be your sole place?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I've been looking at property around here too, so that matters.
Just curiosity, I mean, I know, you know, we've been working with Michelle on a couple of these HCA's here. Given that, there is already an HCA for the retail, it's just at a different location, does that create any ability to move that along a little faster? I mean, we're obviously, I'm here, you know, for two companies. I would like to see them both move forward and be able to start negotiating the HCA, but I do understand the desire to sort of get all of these HCA's together. But is there any sort of more ability to move at least forward on the retail side?
I thought the HCA was tied to the location.
It is.
So you do have a separate host community agreement for the retail host, for the host community agreement for the retail establishment that's at 200 Millennium Circle. There may be some other issues with that host community agreement as well, with just simply amending it to change the address. So again, I do recommend that the board just defer its vote so that we can address those and make sure that everything runs smoothly to the extent that you do want to have a new HCA.
I can say that, you know, the board has been not aggressive, but we've been pretty assertive, making sure that, you know, we're addressing, you know, anything that's been kind of lingering. So, you know, we'll be revisiting, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay.
You know, I mean, we meet every 2 weeks
That's great.
for 6 hours.
That's great. I've seen that. No, that's great. We appreciate that. Okay.
So, all right. No, I think it was some good information, and, you know, we're always, you know, interested in meeting new people that are interested in opening businesses in town. So,
Awesome.
great.
All right.
It was good to see you again, too.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Are you gonna stick around too?
If you'd like me to.
Oh, that's okay.
What, you wanna do it for free?
It was nice meeting you in person, though.
It was very nice to come out in person. It's so different than being, you know, on a screen.
Yeah.
Very nice. I hope you don't live too far so you can enjoy your nice little ride home, so.
Not a far trip back. Have a good evening, everyone.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm wondering, I know Mr. Smith is here from the parks. Can we jump down to 14? Can we entertain that? Okay. Come on up, Mr. Smith.
If you want to stay in line, I'd like to turn the heat down.
It should be down.
Gosh.
I did. I turned it down to 70.
There's chickens hatching over there.
Do what?
They're not?
No. You're supposed to have the doors open, during an open meeting. Yep. At least one door.
At least one door.
Yeah.
That door's open.
Door to nowhere.
Okay, so agenda item number 14, discuss and possible vote to approve and sign the license agreement with Lakeville Martial Arts Club. So with our packet this evening, we have a memo from the Parks Commission regarding the proposed license agreement for the Lakeville Martial Arts. There was a question that I had asked Andrew to, you know, look in how long has the Lakeville Martial Arts Club been located, you know, at that, it's 15 years, which is.
Oh, yeah,
It's a
he's
long
been,
time.
and then before Loon Pond, he was in that building, so I moved here in 2000, he's still been here. Just a couple things up front, is just understand that we didn't negotiate this with him. We haven't even discussed it with him. But at the parks, we had a meeting and, came up with a number that we're comfortable with, we think is fair, and it fits our budget. So just to give you a little, history, 2 contracts ago, which would say 6 years, we were getting $475 a month, which was $5,100 a year. The last contract was $725, which was $8,700 a year. And for this one, we're gonna 3-step it. So the first year is $835, which is $10,500 a year. Then the next year is $925 for $11,100. Final year, $975, which is $11,600. Just some other background is, obviously, I think everyone knows who he is. He's just an outstanding person. Great benefactor of the parks. He's done a lot for us. He will lock the bathrooms at night when he's there, or generally they're there, because our bathrooms are open. And for criminal purposes, we like to keep it locked. He will go in if it runs out of toilet paper, go in there and fill it up. So we've always had a great relationship. It's also only about 600 square feet. We will look to see, it's half of the maintenance building. It could be 7, I'm just throwing it out there. It should get some work inside, it should. It needs some upgrade and painting and things like that.
Madam Chair, how much have we spent in the last 15 years on that building as town? 0, correct?
We don't, yeah, generally,
That's not accurate.
well, I'm saying if
No, on the building.
For him,
By repairs, you mean?
Yeah, by repairs or additions to the building.
Just sent out an update this afternoon that said at least $10,000.
Where did we get that from?
Well, it's not like necessarily like upgrades. It's more like, I think you guys pumped out the sewage or the septic.
yeah, I mean,
More than a handful of times.
we take care of, I mean, it's the town's building, but the parks is responsible for it. So, we had issues with our septic last year. We had to get it pumped. We got to get a camera because septic's been there since Ted Williams has been playing down there. So that needed
But
work.
wait, I might be wrong. Isn't the general entrance to the septic in that building too?
The septic is,
The toilets, the
Yeah.
public toilets
Yeah,
are on
that's-
the outside of his building, not.
yeah,
ones
well,
in
it's,
the
yeah,
inside.
it is on the outside of the building, but it's still, but most of the problem with the septic wasn't the use of the MMA using the bathroom, it's the public. They
Yeah,
would,
yeah, that's the
they
soccer
would,
fields.
they would, throw rocks down there and dirt and jam it with everything.
They have their own bathrooms.
So
Yeah, the filters got clogged.
the filters got clogged. So that's just a normal maintenance thing we would have to do. It really has nothing to do with him. He does have a bathroom in there, but our employee over there shares it. The roof seems to be in pretty good shape. The boiler we checked out, we did have a problem with the thermostat this year, so that had to be replaced. But as far as upkeep for him, for that side of the building, there's really a lot, because a lot of the other stuff was, we upgraded the electric and the lighting and the maintenance barn portion of it. We did that this year too, because it needed it. So, I mean, I'm not saying that there's not gonna be,
No, I don't ever remember spending any money on the actual inside for that building or specifically for the studio as a landlord. I
Yeah,
remember all the
that
money-
unit. We'll call
Yeah,
it
all
a
the
unit.
money was spent in the garage side
and the irrigation and the,
and on the
Septic
outside
system.
bathrooms that serve the public that are not
his bathrooms.
It's very small trim work, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there
$200 maybe.
3 years and I haven't spent a penny in there. I'm just saying that. So, so I think, looking at this, we decided, we think it's still a significant increase. It's an extra $2,000 a year for this year coming up. And then, as I say, it steps up, pays on time. I don't see anyone else going in that building. If we decided to say you're not paying enough and you decide to leave, there's nobody that I can think of who would want to go in there in its condition or what they would use it for. That's just my opinion. So, we just think that being the neighbor he has been, we're doing increases. It used to be a one price for 3 years. So I decided to do, let's do it every year because, things could happen and things go up. I'm not even sure he'll accept this. Maybe he can't, maybe he will, but this is what we're willing to accept, or we're not willing to accept anything less than this. So that's why I brought this to you. The only thing you can do is go up, but that's for this discussion tonight.
So it's the Town of Lakeville's license agreement, so it is the select board who oversees this. And I know we've gone through some changes in our office, but I want to make sure, and maybe this falls with whatever system you put in place. I don't want to miss a deadline like this again. This was February 28, 2025. And I know it wasn't up to, the parks, because it's under us, but, we should be talking about these kind of things 60 days, prior to expiration, and then, working out anything. Because now it's, we've got a whole month right now that's already been in operation.
That's why we got right on
I just wanted
it.
to make sure, because I know we talked about that when you first came on, how important it was to make sure that all those little moving parts were kind of captured.
Yeah,
So-
high priority going forward.
Well, something like Loon Pond would have to be done a year before, because there's RFPs to go out and previous bookings, so.
Right. So, all right, but is it up to the parks to look at the license agreement with the cost? This is.
Well, you gotta understand, that's our revenue.
Right.
Town's revenue.
So I think the
How do you
last
consider it
time,
being the town's revenue, being that we take care of the building and the revenue comes to us
We
and
need to
not to you?
stop thinking that the enterprise fund is a separate town budget. It is a separate accounting line item.
Oh,
It's still the town's money. Parks is not a different town.
so to my recollection, I think the last time we were the ones that increased it to the 725 because we felt as though that just wasn't sufficient.
Okay.
And just want to go to Brian's thing. Listen, I'm not an enterprise fund guy. I think we should de-enterprise it.
You
But-
talked for it at town meeting.
Did you hear me at the last meeting when you and Michael came, when I was fighting with the group?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, well, whatever.
All
I'm
right,
not gonna have to
so
deal with it
back to
anymore, but
this,
you
so,
gotta outline what the enterprise fund and what it isn't, because we're responsible for the expenses on the parks, everything.
so this, when we receive the payments, is that tracked under the, does it come into the town and go into the general fund?
I believe it goes into the enterprise, right?
No, it goes to the enterprise.
It goes into the enterprise,
Yeah.
okay. But with regards to license agreements, that is up to the select board, so you're just making a recommendation?
This is just a recommendation to you.
Okay,
It's obviously your decision, but we did this being with the history and what we know and what fits into our budget. That's it.
all right,
So I've got several comments, Madam Chair, when you're ready.
sure.
One, this seems like it should be a lease agreement, not a license agreement. I'm not sure why it's a license agreement. It was a license agreement the last time around, so it's probably just been carried forward. This feels,
Not allowed to have a lease for more than 1 year in a row.
then we should
Whereas in
make
the
it 1 year
license, you
term.
can.
So you're saying
then-
lesser to lessee instead of license to licensee?
So then, well,
I mean, the town of Middleborough just entered a 99-year lease with the old, police station. So I mean, it's like a technicality.
so does it fall under different procurement law?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like this is so far under market rate, it's not even funny. I mean, similar 1,200 square foot studio commercial in Lakeville goes for like $1,800.
But it's not.
It's not 1,200, it's usable.
I got, one person told me it's 1,800, another person told me it's 1,806, so.
The whole building?
somewhere
The whole
between-
building
The whole
is.
building.
The license, well, so
Have you ever been?
the actual studio is
Years.
less than this.
Yeah.
This is not 1,800 square feet. This is not 18.
This
It's,
is way bigger than 1,800 square feet, isn't it?
well, yeah, but, well, it goes from about there to probably where you're
So
sitting.
then somebody's gotta get us an accurate square footage.
No, I'm not
So
debating with
I
you,
do
I'm
believe-
just,
Who was on the board in 22? You and I were, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Rich was.
I was gone.
22, 23, 24.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think we had gone through a lot of the, how many square feet is it? I don't have those notes in front of me, but I'm sure we can get them all. And I agree with you, Brian. I mean, you know, retail space is at a premium. I've also been told in the past that this is a community type of an organization. It's for kids.
But that's what bites us in the ass.
I know, and the other thing is, it is a difficult location to rent because it's not a storefront.
it's got no
but
windows.
I totally agree with you, and at the time, I thought there was another one closer to compare to.
I mean, if there's any department that we should be making sure gets every nickel, this is the one. And I know, they had another request, which thankfully I watched the meeting and they turned it down, where Loon Pond Lodge wanted a discount on rent because Tri-Fest was coming. Like, no, we
Yeah,
can't do these things.
We don't do that.
Like, this just looks absurdly low to me, and maybe I'm just completely off my rocker.
How much
And I
do
do-
you think a 600 square?
Well, no one
foot-
said if it's 600 for sure yet.
Well, I
We've
can
got
tell
different
you that
numbers.
it's not 1,800.
I mean,
It has a garage.
I think we
and
all
public
just looked it
bathrooms.
up last time,
And
average retail
Includes
space.
heat, includes electricity, it's probably at least $1,500 at least.
Okay, well, what retail store would move into a place that it's gonna need a lot of money, it doesn't have windows, the bathroom is gonna have to be all redone if they wanna do it, and, there's no signs, so you're gonna have to put a sign out here saying that there's actually a store here, so that's another issue.
A store? No, it works, they have no signage, they just have a sign on the.
No, I'm talking about if I owned a retail store there, how are people gonna know it's there?
I never said retail.
Well, it could be
You're gonna-
industrial.
Well, you just said retail space, what else would you put in there?
Where would you?
Is it zoned?
Okay,
I don't know what it's
commercial
zoned.
space.
Okay.
Commercial space.
That's fine,
Let's call
but-
that.
Zone
Well,
recreation.
I'm
It's
just-
recreational.
It could only be
Okay.
recreation.
But I think it is
zoned.
zone business, actually. I think the
Are you
whole
sure?
parcel, if I'm not mistaken, if I go back into my copy, if you pull it up, I think that this
Okay.
whole area was.
For example,
business.
I looked up not retail space, I looked up industrial was the closest. If it is 600 square feet, that's like $10,200 a year. So, you know what, Brian, I
Now,
agree, I
and
think
that's-
we
And
need,
that's probably without utilities. This includes electric and heat, which might be tougher for us to split due to the way the building's
That's
set
the
up.
Right.
problem.
But we
right,
could do things to fix that.
right. So I think that, and you know what, last time, this fell through the cracks too again. We were doing it, I think, after the date.
Well,
So.
my advice is, knowing that it was gonna come to this point, is just do a 1-year lease, do a study, let him stay where he is, get the new rate, figure out how many square feet, figure out what you would like to do with it, because it's not fair to kick him out now. But, I think that's the proper way, because there's still too many questions need to be answered here.
If Barbara Minkowski was still here.
Right,
I would
yeah,
ask-
perfect.
I would ask her, and I would ask her, what's the rate of vacancies for these type of spaces at this point? What's the average value that we'd have to put into it? How long would it take us to recoup any monies that we put
So-
into it?
The other thing is, this contract would come up to $33,200. If it was 35, it would have to go out to bid. So why aren't we anyways, if we're that close?
Say that again?
So the 3 years added together come out to about $33,200. But if it was a lease that had a value of 35,000, which we're just about there, you'd have to have a competitive bid. Why did we hire him?
So, so when you call it a
Procurement skills.
So when you call it a license, you kind of like disregard the procurement law on it. If it was a lease, you take the value of the length of the contract, which would be here 3 years. Generally, the assessor does like a rate, what we could get for it. So over 35,000, you gotta do an RFP for it.
Yeah, but we only usually do 1 year at a time.
This is 3 years. I'm not saying we should do that. It's just
No.
I mean, am I wrong in just extending it for a year and then do your research and figure out how many square foot, how much capital you're gonna have to put into it? Could be 30, 50 grand.
I think we should fix this once and for all, is what I think.
Well, the other thing is, if my understanding is correct, Parks have been looking for more office space, and there was a thought about a potential field house for a capital plan.
What, Brian?
A field house,
For what?
Parks.
Oh, I didn't know that.
well, there's the roof, right? Roof for the office.
Oh, we only need a small office, yeah.
Yeah, then I think when we're gonna come back at some point and do the whole building.
No, we
With the
skipped
the
that.
bathroom, you scoop that total?
Forget the bathroom because we use Loon Pond.
Okay.
We just need to fix a leak and put a new roof in. That's all it needs.
Because I look at that building as perfect for their needs. So I was told a few months ago they were looking for a whole new field house, but if that's changed,
Well, ideally, if you said, hey, Michael, here's 120 grand, put septic in, we wouldn't turn it down, but there's no way we could even consider that.
I mean, I think that a 1 year is, we're not throwing him out, and he has been good. I mean, during COVID, when we couldn't use the bathrooms and there were porta potties out there, he cleaned the porta potties, okay, so.
I have no problem with what's there.
No, I
It's
know,
just-
but.
Right, it's just.
But I'm just saying, he's always been good, and I don't wanna, like, just,
No. Because we still have no idea the actual value.
All right, so we can do one or two things. We can, set the determination for the license agreement for, for what, 1 year, at a rate, and put it into effect as of February 28th, 2025. So that's one option. The other option is do nothing and just bring it back to the next meeting.
Did you
which
say
puts us-
February 28th, you would put it, you would
Backdated.
backdate it?
Well, you'd have to
I don't know.
backdate it to March 1st.
Yeah, that's
I
when it
don't think you
ended.
can legally backdate, anything like that. I think I would call a lawyer if that's where you wanted to go on that.
Well, he's
Oh,
still
no,
paying
I'm just
us,
saying that,
I
still
think,
paying the same rate.
I don't know, I think, and again, I may not be here, but I think I would feel better just bringing it back to the next meeting after Andrew has some time to just collect all that information.
So at the very least, we should be 6 months before, like something like this, if we're even considering not renewing, then that's someone's
Right,
livelihood.
livelihood, right.
Yeah, I would say 6 months prior to anything going, we should have a full determination of,
And might I add, consistently, this has been late.
yeah.
How did this
So-
even come up? Did they bring it up? Did we bring it
No,
up?
I got a note saying, hey, Mike, the MMA is coming up, and then we looked at the contract and then
So
we
they
said,
didn't
"Fine."
even bring it up.
Well,
We all
no,
missed it.
no, they didn't.
so,
Who was your note from, Andrew?
No, it was from,
John?
Who was it from?
probably from John, right? And then I think you came in and told me about it.
Yeah.
and
Then that would be them.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, then we kind of got working on it.
so I don't know what it says in here, but I know that, so the rate would just remain the same, so it doesn't say anything that I can find, that because we missed the date, that it's gonna be continued.
No, if we missed the date, we actually own all this property. That's what it says, the surrender clause. So that's a little weird. We should not miss this going forward.
Andrew, you have a calendar, right? He has a whiteboard in his
I
room
do.
that I like.
Poor Andrew.
I love the whiteboard in his room.
I'm not kidding. This is a pretty solid surrender clause that's in here. That's crazy. But,
I don't remember seeing that before.
It's on
It's 19.
page 5,
No, but page 5.
number 19.
It's like the last half of that paragraph.
So go ahead, I'll make you make a decision, but my question is, as far as going forward, are we sticking, if you decide to wait another 2 weeks, we have to collect rent for this month, are we just gonna collect?
You can only collect what was agreed
original?
upon.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So we're gonna continue to do that until you come up with a solution?
Well, do you want more money now, Brian, or, I mean,
Would you ever say no to that?
I know,
think we
but
vote-
what do we base it on?
Yep. I
That's
wanna
the
know
challenge.
you know, the exact square footage that we're talking about. I think we need to, have some rough idea of what that,
What the utilities cost, because giving that away could be hundreds of dollars a month. The other suggestion I would have with the board is we insert the background check clause from the Loon Pond Lodge contract into here as well, since it is a child establishment on town property.
I mean, the quarry forms,
Mm-hmm.
they've never done that, and I've asked a million times back time. I've asked it,
Can we clarify who, because it's not just John, he has people go in there that are adults for there, and they help out, and I think they do it for free. I think it's like a,
Yeah, I'm not sure how to put that one on there. At least the manager, but then if you have, people coming in to give certain classes, I don't know where you can limit it to.
so all,
I think
Adults
all,
working.
I think all adults.
yeah,
Like, how do-
working.
Over 18.
What do we do for the bulk, like all the leagues?
The
Anything?
leagues usually
they
handle all
handle
their
that on their
quarries.
own. So.
yeah, the leagues take care of all that.
Yeah, but any working people or people volunteering over 18 should be subject to the quarries for sure.
Even if you're a volunteer, but you're over the age of
Over
18.
18, yeah.
So they're basically supposed to, every time they hire someone or every quarter, they're supposed to pass in quarry forms.
Yeah,
But for the last 3 years, according to the agreement, we're supposed to send someone from accounting and audit their sales tax. Because, well, now we don't have to worry it because we're paying rent. But in previous years, we got a percentage of food and beverage, but nobody would audit it.
Oh, sorry. Rebecca,
oh
lost
yeah,
it.
I lost one, I'm
I'm
like,
like, what are you talking about?
they're serving
about
beverages
Loon
at MMA?
I'll sign up for a class now.
Fantastic. Andrew, can we get Lacey to, reach out, and let them know that our quarry policy is extended out to anyone?
That was my thought. I mean,
But that's
there's
just, that's just policy that we have.
Yeah, well, we do it for the employees that work for us everywhere, the lifeguards, all of that.
Yeah.
They have to pass a quarry.
Yep.
But I'm sure whatever you do, if it goes up 15 grand a month, of course, he deserves a pretty good, notice.
Yes.
Because his
Agreed.
business has been down here for 25 years. And, so to be fair with him.
No, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. So we're gonna move this to the 14th. We'll bring it back on the 14th.
Square footage and comps.
utility costs.
How are you gonna do utility costs?
Well,
I'm thinking,
The building is $1,400 a month for,
I was gonna say,
Propane.
depending on the square footage.
but they
But it's
use,
use.
but what's the
Like
heated area? Is it just their side or is it the
heated-
garage?
no,
No.
Garage side?
we have the fans.
The garage is heated too.
The garage is heated
And that's
too.
actually used a lot,
And that goes with electric.
because it's only used.
Maybe there's some sort of formula.
You do a sub panel with a kilowatt hour.
Formulas for charge backs.
Huh?
Studio's only 2 hours a day. He does 2
We have
Figure it
a
out.
pretty savvy accountant. that
No, I'm just saying, if you're saying
Figure
using,
it out.
Yeah.
like,
Okay,
using
well,
the garage for 8 hours.
thank you, and I want
For
to
2
thank
hours.
this whole board for their
Yes.
support for the 3 years I've been, especially ARPA. You guys have just knocked it out of the park. We finished all of our ARPA projects.
It's a park pun.
Oh, God, okay, that's great.
What was that?
He said he knocked it out.
He said,
Yeah.
we knocked it
I
out
mean,
of the
It's
park.
Maureen humor. I had to comment.
See that? But no, I mean, you've been behind all of that, and I'm glad we got everything done, and I know there's more things to come. They're gonna be putting a parking lot there, and hopefully, I'm on the capital expenditures committee, and we're gonna see if we can put a fence around Clear Pond. Not this year, but next. or
Like you're a
whatever.
worker too. You did a lot of work.
Yeah, the fence is down.
No, I know,
Fence is
but
down.
you have done a lot of work making these projects come
No problem.
true, so.
So I enjoyed the banter back and forth. Brian, I'll still vote for you, okay? Because I know when I leave.
You just want to keep this paint on, that's all.
You got that right.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
too,
guys. I
Mike.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank
For all
you.
you've done too.
Thank you. Andrew, I'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Be around.
All right, so let's go back to 10.
Another fun
10?
topic.
Yeah, we're backtracking here. 10?
How did I do that?
I had another cheat sheet here. I don't know if it got mixed up while we were sitting next to each other.
8,
Oh, you had a paper copy?
14,
No, for number 10, I had printed out and I put some notes on it, but now it's disappeared. So I either
15, 16,
left it at home or
17.
it went up in flames.
Okay, so agenda item number 10, did you flip your flippies over there?
No, we're in 14
Okay.
still.
So discuss some possible vote to eliminate health insurance for elected officials and whether to submit an article for the annual town meeting. I know that this has come up in the past,
It was just a single.
but years ago. So Brian, I know you requested to put this on the agenda. And through our presentation from our town administrator, this evening, when we were at that page, there was, I think it was currently, it could be as low as, what, 27,500, and that's like a family plan, right? For somebody taking the family plan, an employee. And if all elected officials were to, that currently get, the health benefit, it could be a liability of $265,000 roughly.
That sounds right.
Okay. So right now, for elected officials, we have the select board, we have the Board of Assessors, we have the Board of Health, and we have our town clerk. So those are our elected officials who are eligible for health insurance.
What about the school committee?
They are not, for whatever reason. I've never understood the explanation.
So, yeah, that's interesting because the way originally we had talked about it is that anyone that received a stipend was eligible for it. They must have voted that they were not eligible for it, but they could change that vote at any time. So, like, when we're talking about possible, you might want to extrapolate like extra info on the Lakeville membership
Yeah,
to
'cause
say
that's
that.
another, what, 3 members?
Yeah, because we were offered it on the finance committee back the same time, and the finance committee declined having a stipend. So we were not eligible for any insurance, but it was the stipend that created the eligibility. Another thing about the insurance, we could not get a different insurance than everyone else had. 2017, it was brought up, oh, could they get a different plan, and make it only, the high deductible plan for elected officials? And they said no. And if they're a municipal employee or a special municipal employee, it has to be the same. So just throw that out for everybody.
My turn? All right, thanks.
Never.
No. So thank you for putting this on the agenda. Honestly, this all started as soon as I saw Andrew's early drafts on the budget presentation. I saw that he was taking away his assistant. So that's where this started. That's where I started digging. My thought is this seems like an antiquated benefit offered to only 3 boards at this time. I don't know why we would still have assessors, health, and select board getting this when we have plenty of other boards and commissions that do tons of work, yet don't receive a stipend.
I can weigh some information in on that.
I know like Board of Health used to have employees, but those have been transferred under the care and custody of inspectional services. But it still just seems very strange in my mind. And given the potential swing, right now we're costing $104,000. It could be up to 260 something. Lord knows if we added another 60 grand for the school committee, if they were to suddenly get it, that's a pretty big swing depending on who gets elected every year. So my thought was to eliminate it. I mean, these are not the kind of benefits people should be running for positions to get. And with everybody else making cuts, I feel like it's a cut we should consider as well. Because even if we don't take the insurance, we still get an opt-out payment, right? So the way that is calculated is if I did take the health insurance plan, if I would take an individual plan, but I choose not to, I would get $2,500 a year. If I was going to take an insurance plan and I was eligible for a family plan, then I'm given $5,000 per year, right? So all of us, well, I shouldn't say all of, but I know in my select board pay stub, as massive as it is, every pay stub is $414 I get for not taking insurance because I have insurance through my employer. And to me, that's just ridiculous. Like, why am I getting money for not taking something when all these other cuts are happening? So there's 11 positions that still get it. I think we really should consider getting rid of it. And if we wanted to phase that in to say, sorry, Leah, since you're running, but like if we phased it in with the next election or whatever, like if you're already taking the health insurance, then fine, you can keep getting it for the rest of your current term. But then if you run again and get reelected again, it's gone. And I don't like, can we get rid of these opt-out payments as well? It's a huge cost that I don't think the town should be expending.
I have feelings on it.
I have feelings on it, and I'll say that last time I spoke at town meeting, I gave the reasons why I think it's always been here and the reasons why the particular boards have it. And I will also say that I do understand the financial implication. You're right, I'm up for re-election and I will say right now, I don't take the insurance. I do take the buyout. The first thing I'll talk about is the buyout. That buyout has actually swung a few people to take a job here because it's a lot more of a buyout than they would get somewhere else. So for them, that was a nice little boost in their pay.
But I'm just speaking about boards though, not employees.
Right, but I'm talking about the buyout. So, you could say something like, let's reduce the buyout. Well, we can, but then some folks only come over because it's a $4,000, whatever it is per year. Despite all the benefits, we don't qualify for, what do we do? OBRA, I think, which is for retirement
Other
people.
post-employment benefits,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, not OPEB, I think it's OBRA, which.
It's not OPEB.
Right.
Oh,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's if you don't qualify for anything, they take that money out because they're still trying to force you to save some money. If someone gets that would still happen anyways out of the stipend. But I think it's all or nothing. I will say this, there's nothing easy about that certification exam to be an assessor. I mean, you have to stay current. There's nothing easy about sitting here for 5 hours, 10 hours a week. We do 10 hours worth of work and that doesn't even include one phone call, one email. I know lots of folks who think it's, worthwhile. I do know that the Board of Assessors also manage their payroll, their office. Now, Board of Health, I know turned over a lot of their management responsibilities to inspectional services, but they still have to maintain some sort of certification because in the absence of the health inspector, they have the ability to go out and approve septic
During
tanks.
COVID, they were out
right.
approving septic tanks and.
So while I know it costs money, honestly, Brian, I've talked to people on both sides. They're like, I think if you have it, who knows, maybe the vibe has changed, but last time it was brought forward by two pretty influential people in town and it didn't pass.
It was Rich,
So,
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And doing away with it didn't pass. I've always wanted to know the answer, why the school committee gets a stipend, but yet doesn't qualify for this because the check gets cut from the town.
Because I believe they voted not to do it, but I think that is, again,
Right, but
to vote.
we could vote, if that's the case, then we should be able to vote to do away with health insurance, but still keep the stipend and the buyout. So, you know.
So, I mean,
And then one of my other thoughts, Brian, is what you had said a couple of meetings, I think the last meeting, where just because we don't like something doesn't mean we shouldn't give it to the voter to decide. But
from what I understand, and I'm not sure we've got a clear answer yet, it sounds like this vote was a select board vote, not a town meeting vote.
so I can't,
Insurance.
I can only tell you the history behind what I've been told for probably 20 years, why however many years the benefits have been around. But, I know that it did go to town meeting to do away with the benefits and it failed.
1997.
Not 90,
No, 2017 it
Right.
failed.
it failed.
1997?
I was still an
wanna say.
assessor, so.
So
The
93,
last time it came into a vote.
was it 93, Tracy, that Rita said, like, she doesn't even remember it that?
When I spoke to Rita Garrett, our former town administrator, she said it was in effect when she started with the town in 1993.
Ah.
I started going back to minutes. I started in 1963. And I've gotten, I want to say 20, 25 years done. And I have not found any votes yet or any mention of this in the minutes.
I did not ask her to go through 30 minutes, 30 years worth.
Could have been
She's
working-
efficient.
You could be working on the,
She's
the
efficient.
park plan.
So 93 is when Rita.
Rita
came in,
started
right?
in 93 and she said it was in effect when she started.
Okay, so I'm wondering, because I know that there was limited boards at one point in time where, like, the select board covered the assessing, the welfare, and,
Health.
you know, Board of Health, and then, you know, became their own board. So I'm wondering if they received a stipend way back in the day, and then just as
Just
they.
parlayed.
Yeah, because each, you know, if you look at that, all three of those, so thank you for the fun fact, because.
Yeah, that is a
brought me
really
right
good
back to
fun
it.
fact, yeah.
Wait till you see the next one.
Oh, boy.
It's a doozy.
Oh, I'm sure. This one was good, though. But you think about it, it was, all three offices were covered by one 3-member board. And then they separated. So maybe the benefit went with them. But
Maybe.
health insurance wasn't back in the day, but,
And it didn't cost what it does now.
no, it doesn't.
No, exactly.
So I guess the question needs to be asked, can the stipend still remain? And do away with the health insurance?
And if it's decided that it should go to the voter, I think it should be grandfathered into whoever is already eligible.
I agree. I do not believe in taking people's health care away.
I didn't suggest that.
No,
just
no,
to be
I'm
clear.
just throwing that out
With
there.
clarification, it was not said about taking it away, but.
But I could see a pathway forward to say anyone elected, newly elected after 2027 is no longer eligible because it's not something that's sustainable.
Why that far out?
You can't do 2026 because we will be,
You're talking FY or calendar, sorry.
I'm talking FY.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, FY. Because of the way we have town meeting versus election, we would be backdating it. That's just it's a deeply personal thing. And if someone is, has that expectation and taking it away, I think that's a pretty difficult conversation to have. But if someone doesn't have the expectation of it, and they never have the expectation of it.
I didn't even know until I was elected the first time that it was even a thing.
No.
It's like,
I didn't
what?
either. I was an assessor for how long? And Rita's like, you haven't done your paperwork. I'm like, what paperwork? She's like, you have to go upstairs to payroll. I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think in this day and age, it's just we're talking about 11 people. Like, why doesn't planning have it? Look at all the work that they do. Or ZBA, even though they're appointed. There's so many other boards that could make an argument to say, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Absolutely, and I think most of them voted that they didn't want it.
in 1980.
No,
Like,
no, no, no.
recently?
No, but I know if it was offered to finance, because that's the board that I was on at the
Yeah.
time. I don't know if it was offered to other boards as well.
There's gotta be history of that somewhere then,
Mm.
like a finance minutes or something.
It would have been 2017 or 2018 when the school committee got it.
Okay. I mean, personally, I stand by, I think is we should phase it out, get rid of the fluctuation. We're talking about 11 positions. And I'm on board with getting rid of all of our stipends too. Everybody else is making sacrifices.
I want to
All
make
of
sure
them.
that the exemption for the elected officials is the town clerk. That has to be built into the language, because that is a
Right.
full-time position.
Yeah. agreed.
Sorry, Lou.
No, trust me, that question was asked as soon as that agenda came out, and they said, oh, no, we're talking about the 3 boards.
But I want to make sure that we don't, sometimes we go with tunnel vision and we don't spend enough time to think about, the ripple effect. So just want to make sure that we have that on there.
So I'm hearing no interest, but we don't know if it's us or town meeting.
Say that again?
I said, I'm hearing no interest in this room at changing this, but we also don't know if it's town meeting or not.
It would have to be town meeting, that's the only.
Well, the question was, can you still get a stipend without the insurance? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
you can get-
my sense is if it was brought to town meeting in 2017, then maybe legal counsel said they had to bring it
I
to
feel like
town
you need to
meeting.
find that warrant article now. Lil.
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah.
That was it.
I was an assessor, elected in 2015 through 2019, so it was probably 17.
Yeah, so I'm not opposed to, any
Broken
newly
hips.
elected officials after, whatever, whether it's,
Is it by their
April
election?
20.
By their election or when they get voted out? Do you know what I mean? Like when you grandfather in?
At the annual 2017
No,
election.
I'm saying when you grandfather people in.
I would probably say grandfather people in that already are getting it, but that's me on a soft day when it comes to that stuff.
But is it by their election? Like the next election they come up,
No,
they
that's gotta be
lose
a hard
or?
date.
I don't know. I'm just,
Well, that's something that needs to be discussed because.
Are you basically
like,
asking, like, if they
but-
win again, do they keep their?
Yeah.
Right, but for example, you're grandfathered into your health insurance split from the time you're elected, no matter how many times you're like any other employee, so
whether it's 50-50,
65,
65,
45.
or whatever.
Technically,
But
because
also,
it can always
how
go down.
can you stop somebody's insurance, health insurance, on a hard date without having
No, you can't.
Cobra, or you can't, so
No,
there
because
has
they would
to
have
be-
to pick up Cobra, which
Right.
is
Wait,
outrageous,
what?
right?
If I am suddenly not elected though, my insurance is gone, so maybe there's a Cobra payment period, but.
Right,
Right.
that's
Well,
what I'm
I don't-
saying, they're just.
Right, but whoever that person is, so if that had been me, I would have been already investigating, knowing my insurance was, depending on an election. So,
I mean, just to be clear, at the moment, as the presentation I think showed, 3 out of 11 actually take it right now. And I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're 1 year away from election, 3 years, 5 years. Well, it can't be 5, that's not planning. But like, maybe next year it's 8. We'll be sitting here going, oh, it costs a lot more money this year now. So that's why I would rather act sooner than later, but I don't know what the path is.
So maybe election 2027, and date not to exceed, like, if someone gets elected in 2026, then they're 3 years. So,
Why couldn't,
so if you get
do a
elected,
fall town meeting, you could have it there, right?
yeah, you still have to figure out the dates.
to wait the date, it'd have to be for the next year.
Whatever the next April
Yeah,
is.
yeah, and then it would start at that juncture.
Yeah. Be a couple months in the
But
fiscal year.
But it's, yeah,
You'd be saving, not adding money.
So,
But this number could change in the middle of any fiscal year.
what do we have left on this?
Memorandum of understanding.
Because some of this stuff we
Water
can
connection.
move, but, I mean,
You know what?
we'd still have three members to
Yeah,
carry on.
I mean,
but-
I'll try to stay for the
All right,
next,
the
let's go,
memorandum.
yeah, if we can go in order.
So there's a
Which number are we going to?
placeholder
I'm waiting.
for
What?
this on the annual town meeting, but there's questions that Andrew's gonna have answered, and I guess you'll bring it back on the 14th, April 14th, when the warrant closes. But we're the select board, we can
13.
extend the warrant article closing date if we so choose. So, all right, so we're good. I just didn't want to flip and not make sure we circled on that. Okay. So number 13, please. This is the memorandum of understanding with the Massachusetts Health Officers Association, Inc., for the development and implementation of sustainable tobacco control program, and vote to appoint as the tobacco agent. So there's a memorandum of understanding between the town of Lakeville and the Massachusetts Health Officers Association, which for short is MOA, for the development and implementation of a sustainable tobacco control program. It has been signed, but town council has asked that the select board would need to vote to approve the MOU.
It's been, wait, can you explain that? It's been signed, but?
Signed by the health, right?
No, me. So
Yeah.
when this came in to my office, I thought it was in my authority to sign it. We then kind of ran after the fact to the town council, and they said the MOU is fine, but then you just have to like ratify it essentially by the select board.
Andrew wants to be the tobacco czar.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, in the past, I think they've used it out of their budget to basically hire somebody. This time they've gotten a grant to do it. And so this group has kind of done it for a lot of different towns. So,
Any liability to the town, anything fall back on the town?
so that was like the one thing
Night, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
so we got additionally insured, so.
Okay. So basically, we just have to vote it.
Yeah, right, officially.
All right.
Is this new?
They've always done random checks, but this is new through this organization.
Okay.
This is almost like a, like the assessors one, like Kathy Costello. It's like the health agents association. And
Cause I never remember doing this before.
yeah. So they've hired it in the past. They got a grant to do this for free.
It used to be the police used to do it back in the day for the, I was the underage person that would go into businesses.
Really?
Because I looked like a fetus when I was young. But yeah, I remember it used to be under the police, to do tobacco.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion, to approve the MOU, which is the Memorandum of Understanding between the town of Lakeville and the Massachusetts Health Officers Association for the development and implementation of a sustainable tobacco control program. The term of this would be April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion?
Don't smoke, kids.
Yep, hearing none. Roll please.
Baby and I.
Carboni, aye.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the board also has to vote to appoint the MHOA as the tobacco agent for the town of Lakeville.
Massachusetts
So is
Health
this-
Officers Association.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I didn't put it on the cover sheet, but, if you look at the Board of Health memo, they're requesting that the board appoint them as
The
the
agenda.
tobacco agent.
I make a motion to appoint the Massachusetts Health Officers Association as the tobacco agent for the town of Lakeville from the term of April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, roll.
Sorry, it just says discuss the MOU on the agenda item.
It says, and vote to
Oh,
appoint.
and there it is, yep, I see it. Yep, no discussion.
Okay, roll please.
Fabian, aye.
Carboni, aye.
Candido, aye.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, can I ask who made the first motion and second?
I made the first.
Thank you.
And Maureen seconded it.
Thank
And
you.
then Brian made the
I got the
motion.
second one, yeah.
Seconded. Okay. We have a water connection for 10 Harding Street. Agenda item number 15. Okay, so this is, potable water for 6,000, gallons, maximum per day. 10 Harding Street Realty Trust. 10 Harding. Okay.
This feels a little weird because it was like they don't know what's going there yet.
I know we've kicked them back when we don't know what's going in there.
Yep, just, it says commercial facility and fire suppression. What kind of commercial facility? Yep.
6,000 gallons.
So the message from the planning board that, you know, they didn't know, what the uses of the building are. So, I mean, we can certainly
Is it
say.
a spec building? Like,
No.
someone just-
Yeah, as far as I know, I believe it's just a spec building.
Yeah.
It's not built yet, obviously.
I don't think they can tell you when
Is this one on the
they haven't
corner here?
sold it
Talking
to
about-
anyone and no one's rented it.
Because whatever reason, the dot shows up here at Millennium. It's down here.
All right, do we ever, so if we voted this, it brings our level down a little more?
Yep.
Yep, I think right now we have I think it's 215,000 allocated out of the 300.
Okay.
But we have to come back and do that IMA anyways, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll entertain a motion, to approve the Taunton Water Connection application for 10 Harding Street for 6,000, gallons per day.
Second.
Motion. Who so moved it?
Oh, I thought you said.
I said,
Oh,
I thought
sorry.
you
She
said
said
you made a
she'll
motion.
entertain a motion. I still really would like to know what's going there. Oh, sorry, we don't have a second. Do we have a second?
We don't have a motion.
we have a second, we just didn't have a motion.
So moved.
There you go.
There you go. And Brian seconded.
Huh? I did? I mean, I'm
Okay.
kind of with you, like 6,000's
Yeah.
not the smallest number, but it's still what is it for?
So how do we ask people what's it for when it's a spec building?
I don't know. Because like houses are easy, how many bathrooms and whatnot.
Right, per person,
Yeah.
whatever.
You'd be like, what are you planning to do there? I'm planning to sell it to someone that's gonna
Well,
use it.
and then, of course, let's say they really need 20,000, right?
Then they'll have to come
And then they
back.
have to come back, but then,
Yeah,
If they only use 2,000, they won't come back.
Right.
they should, but,
We don't have a water police.
yeah, we don't. Water boy?
Not yet.
It's not in my purview yet. Might be in 5 minutes, but
Yeah, but I have no guidance on that for like, if we don't know what it is, we don't.
I know,
have
and
any
it really does seem like, the response that Tracy got was that it was just a guesstimate.
Right, and the thing is, sometimes you can't move forward with a project, and you can't get funding for a project unless you have
Right.
infrastructure.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
if they know that the water's coming,
when you put in the address,
then it makes it,
comes up there.
a more viable option, so.
We're still going through the planning board process too, obviously, and
Okay.
I think we have people from the town have asked, like the fire chief's asked, and no answer.
All right. So, we can vote not to accept, or,
Someone could withdraw their motion.
could, but
Is there a second?
do we?
Yes.
Do,
That was you.
I guess, but I guess the question I'd like to answer before I withdraw it is, do we need to know what the building is to approve it? And if it is a spec building, then we must have had spec buildings before. Like, do we not approve spec buildings for water in Lakeville?
So my concern is they need 50,000 gallons because it's.
A
and
water
they're
just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would be content right now with the building commissioner telling us what the average for an industrial building per person would be.
Somebody's phone will buzz in a second.
Nate, are you
It's getting late.
Check your,
It's
message.
getting late.
I mean, doesn't it seem like they should be a little further along with planning to come say like, here's what we need, this is what we're doing? I don't know.
I mean, you know, you do have to start somewhere, like Lorraine said, but I feel like this one's just a
You're
little
doing,
too
like,
vague for me.
space.
Yeah.
If you withdrew your motion, they can always come back and refile.
I will withdraw my motion under duress.
You can't say that.
No, I'll withdraw my motion, but I do have to say that if we are going to deny water permits based on the fact that it's a spec building, I don't know that that's good policy.
I think,
No, I agree. I mean, this is an area where like, we need to come back every year or whatever and be like, what did they actually use at this place?
Well, right, well, don't forget, we just did the hospital, and how much water did we, allocate?
Let's charge them.
Should be
The
70,
hospital, huh?
I think
Oh,
70,000,
yeah,
70.
But that was for way back when, and then now that the use had changed.
right, now
we have to
it's
come
more
back, but
and more and
But we
more.
know that these people are gonna want water. They know they're gonna want water, so I wouldn't withdraw, I would just,
I'll be happy
Approve
to
it.
take back my motion, but at the same
What was
time,
that email?
we should probably.
Okay, make the call. Are you withdrawing your motion?
I'm
or not?
withdrawing it. We can wait until we can find more information, but if we don't find more information, I really don't.
And Kathy's note was from like 2 weeks ago, maybe they'll have some more information soon.
sure. So can we put this back on can we put this on the 14th?
Everyone's sleeping. And
Yeah.
not one of us got, including Andrew, nothing?
No, nothing, nothing.
All right, so the 16, agenda item number 16, this is for a request from Jamie Bissonette to connect to Middleborough Water for 2 Main Street. Now, this is a little different. If the select board in Lakeville approves this, then it goes to Middleborough Town Meeting vote, for the connections. So, they're hoping that it gets on the April 28th Middleborough Town Meeting warrant. So, I'll entertain a motion to approve the request from Jamie Bissonette to connect to Middleborough Water for 2 Main Street.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll.
Fabian, aye.
Carboni, aye. Indeed abstain.
Day I.
Okay. All right, is there, what else do we got? We got updates and that's it. Can we get through it? Subcommittee updates? Yes?
Nothing significant.
No, so there's 2, under the select board policy subcommittee, there were 2 policies that we had a first read, second digest, and now it's back in front of us for a vote.
Much easier to read for everybody.
Which I found that, and you know, sometimes, you know, when you move something from like one platform to the next, and it gets distorted and the fonts go, you know, bazonk.
Or if you're cheap and don't have Word on your own
Yeah,
computer.
I thought maybe it went wonky.
What does it say when you've had Word on your own computer for a year and didn't know it because you paid the membership?
I was like, oh, it's too expensive. But
It's called 4.5 hours into a meeting is what that's called.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is select board policy on utilization of town council. So we did have some significant, discussion. It seems like you, had a chance to whittle this down some, so.
I did, so just, again, most of, what I did, I pared it down significantly based on conversations with both Leah and Brian to, some of their concerns about the language and some of the issues that it brought up. Did anyone have a chance to read it?
Give me 30 more seconds.
Okay.
So I did read it and, I know you want to call it a policy, but, and I promise, it's 2 lines, 3 lines. Right in the first sentence, you write, this policy establishes guidelines. That's why I keep saying this should be guidelines for select board.
But
Now,
what are guidelines, like, compared to a policy?
the difference, right, the difference is punishment. And then I still think, and Maureen, you and I have talked about your record keeping idea. We talked about that 5 years ago, 6 years ago. However, if it's part of a policy, if for some reason the town administrator has an inaccurate logbook, I wouldn't want any future select board to say, you're not keeping that very well, because things change quickly. So that's like my biggest, and you know what, again, a lot of these things, confidentiality, cost management, all this other stuff falls for me under, ethics, and the, conflict of interest that we do, but the record keeping, while I do understand and I think it's a great idea, it was a great idea 6 years ago, it never stopped being a great idea, I just don't, that should be like a suggested practice maybe for the town administrator versus a policy.
Well, I appreciate your opinions, and I tried to
Yeah.
incorporate what you had said in the last meeting, and I pared it down to make it less cumbersome.
Yep.
Just based on, you know, the critique.
Yep.
So I'd love to put it to a vote.
Okay.
Put it to a vote with a full complement?
Do you want to wait for the new board, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I have no objections if that's what we want to do, but.
So if it's a policy for us, it'd be nice to have the whole.
Is there,
kit and caboodle.
is there anything else while we're sitting here that is,
For me, it really is like the record keeping thing, because I know what you want to see there. We've talked about it so many times.
it's the best.
Way back when, years and years and years ago.
Best.
But I mean, it would almost require every single opinion the town administrator gets, goes into a book, but then it has to be, I just find it cumbersome. That to me, you know, but.
I feel like too, there's not just us, there's many other people, things, boards, committees and towns that utilize council, like how do we make sure they all funnel through the one place?
I think they should do the same.
Well, that's all well said, like, how do we make sure they go through Andrew, since he's sitting here right now, to say like, hey, do we have an opinion on this already? And how old is it? Like, do we need to refresh it or not? Instead of just, you know, if we get a bill and it's, I'm not gonna pick up any boards, right? It's the circus council. Like, oh, we got a big bill for them.
But to that point, had we had record of what they had asked, we know the opinion. There's existing, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel as it is. We can even see, even an opinion that's crazy and, oh, that looks really out to date. You actually narrow down what you're gonna ask the next time to council. Andrew, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have the book, the old book in your office of all the opinions? Did it survive
I'm sure I do, I just don't know where exactly it
the
is.
upturn? But as a town administrator, would you find that of value? Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's like issues that come up and I'm like,
But it would only be of value if it's updated properly.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Look at what's
I'd have to
happened
update
with
it
our
properly.
policy book.
Probably shimming a desk in your office.
It's probably somewhere.
That makes me sad.
But there's just a
All
lot
right,
of like
so I'm
historical
gonna move
stuff.
these two things, to the 14th. Now, I know that this is, I think, this is my last meeting chairing this 5 fantastic member board. But I will open the meeting on the 9th, and then we'll do the reorganization at that point. So, loading up
Cause
the
the
next person.
election's Monday, the 7th?
Holy moly, it
7th.
just seems like flying now.
But there is a couple of budget meetings that you could, potentially, someone could, because, that's kind of a problem, because you're still acting chair until we reorganize, so you'll have to do the agendas for the budget meetings.
Right.
Enjoy.
Yeah. So, yeah, and Andrew, so you can put some of that stuff.
I can slide it in there. We can
Yeah.
start a little earlier or something, or something, but the reorg, I think we have to by our bylaw to reorg the
first
first
meeting.
meeting after the election, so we'll
So
be doing
then
that
that would
first
be the
thing.
9th.
Do we know if the 14th looking like another mega meeting? Like, can we slide a couple things on the 9th and 10th or whatever they are?
There might be opportunities, so I'm not gonna, because when I set the agendas for those, with Andrew and Tracy, there might be a couple of things we can put at the beginning before we convene with everybody, so.
Okay.
But you're right. So I think the first meeting I ever had was 4 hours and 5 minutes, and then the last meeting is 4 hours, 4.5 hours. So-
What are you known for, Lorraine? Marathon meeting, Lorraine Carboni.
But why? Not my fault.
Because you're too generous as a chair.
Yeah. Well, I was called rude tonight, which is fine. Because when I said to, it was more of a comical,
Oh.
wow, that was rude, because I said, we're still in session. Tracy heard it.
That's why I asked
signature,
if we
please,
take a
talk to-
break.
Right? Yeah. All right, so anyways, new business, old business,
Did we
new
skip
business.
fire station and Old Colony and all that stuff?
Well,
Old Colony, I don't have anything new. Andrew already touched on most of it from earlier. Their next meeting is also the 14th, so I'll let you miss that too.
Yep.
There's also a meeting April 15th.
Is that one of the work group meetings?
Yeah, they want to go over how the election's going to be kind of structured.
Oh, right. Yep.
I have-
So Brian, did you say you're missing Old Colony or this?
I'm probably gonna have to miss Old Colony again. So it'll be like 2 or 3 meetings in a row, but.
I don't have much to report on the fire station building, other than they're really in-depth, going through their, pre-qual.
I have a question, as long as I'm still sitting here.
Yeah.
So,
sounded dark.
who is involved now in all these stages? So, are there independent bidding, business meetings, all different groups? Does that subcommittee work?
So we, as the fire station building committee, we have from there like working groups. They're not like designated subcommittees, but they're like working groups where, Pomeroy, and Secoshio will work with the fire chief on, like right now, like for one example was design.
Oh.
Like they met with a designer from the team to talk about colors and
Spaces
and
and-
space and, so that was like one little thing. There was another group that met for
Mechanic,
IT.
IT, then they met with mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
Yep.
Can you like pick and choose what meeting you want to go to? Do you have to go to all of them as the town administrator?
I haven't gone to those.
Yeah.
It's really like technical stuff, like, it's really up to the chief to decide where he wants to put.
Right, but it all
Stuff.
comes back to the board, to the main body. And
I
then
just-
we review it and then, but we really haven't had much other than like some design stuff that we kind of talked
Yeah.
about, but
It's a lot of stuff way over my head. I attended some of those in Taunton and I was like, window dresser, like, just like,
You don't need to know
so they do
everything.
the smaller, groups,
I was
but
just curious.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. They, but the pre-qual right now, it's Pomeroy it's some members of our board, to kind of go through a checklist.
Yeah, and the pre-qualification
Yeah.
date was on the,
Yeah.
schedule.
Yep. So they're gonna be, you know, kind of breaking that down, because it's a little bit more in tune because of the project cost. So I should have something, you know, more for maybe the 14th.
Okay.
So. IT,
Next meeting would be the second Tuesday in April, so that's the 8th. I think we're going to potentially ask Green Rivers to give us an update on the progress on the cybersecurity task list, see how that's going along. If there's anything you'd like me to bring to them to ask questions on, let me guess. AI minutes.
Civic minutes is the specific one. I think that could save us some significant dollars, over the course of, recording all the meetings. But more important than that, I still fail to find planning board ZBA meetings for like 6 months at a time. They're still.
Minutes?
Yeah.
Minutes, yeah.
Yeah. 6 months, a year. Like, that's crazy to me that's still an issue. With this, it's instant. And, you know, the person only has to have someone just skim it, make sure there's not some weirdness that happens. But civic minutes, I tested it out on some of my work, for their summaries and topics. And they put it in the agenda form. They put everything.
It's off Civic Plus.
I
Or
don't
just
know
in
if they're
general?
related, but it's called Civic Minutes.
I think that's a widget offered by the website.
Oh,
And that whole proposal they kind of looked at
Oh, it
David's.
could be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to put anybody in the spot, but does Kathy do planning's minutes typically, or somebody else?
yes.
Yes.
Kathy.
She does planning
She's at,
board
like-
and ZBA.
She's at like every meeting, do they just not approve them?
They're approving them, they're just not getting up on the website. I see they're going over the minutes in the meetings.
That's weird.
Yeah. So, but more important, it's those small boards that the individual board members are covering right now, that we could really get coverage on, and that would be really exciting to have that as, look at me, I'm such a dork, that'd be exciting. But yes, that would be really exciting. And the price compared to having a person do it is a significant savings. The other thing I would love, your board to look at is going through, I see a constant and significant amounts on the software we're using for assessing. I've looked at it in other towns, and we seem much higher than other towns our same size.
On the assessing software.
On the assessing software. But I don't know if it's because they have it under a tech budget,
Yeah.
or they haven't broken it out, but I'm talking
good
like
point.
double.
I think the new assessor guy will probably have something to say about that.
Weigh in on it.
Yeah,
Like currently the GIS contract is under assessing,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
like, maybe that's one part of what it looks
Yeah, so I
higher.
don't know if it's like other towns have it under IT.
Many years
and I'm just
ago.
not seeing it.
Yeah, many years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of shopping around for,
Yeah.
Nope, it wasn't.
Yep,
Like
yep.
that's probably an area where there's like one or two options.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but I figure it might be a really good place, because we're talking $30,000 a year. Like, so,
Well,
you know,
adds
that would be real savings if we could get software that was not crazy town expensive.
Because I know the package Andrew was looking at for the website comes with like 12, 15 different modules or whatnot, so take a look, it might already be in there.
Yeah,
Take a
yeah.
look.
Good times.
Awesome.
Yeah, but those two
Okay.
would be great.
Got
All
it.
right, so nothing on the communications. Citizens Academy, meeting has been rescheduled, that we were, looking to, attend with the MMA, and, so Tracy sent us the reminder.
Yeah, I
don't-
forgot when it's
yeah.
rescheduled.
But it's April, so we'll have something to bring back for that. Any new business? Old business? Okay, so I'm just gonna announce select board meetings. So our next regular meetings are April 14th and the 28th at 5:45 here in the police station. The budget meetings are as follows, April 9th, April 10th, April 15th, and they'll begin at 5:45 PM, and those will also be held here. So no correspondence, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:05.
So moved.
Second.
Roll.
Fabi and I.
Carboni, aye.
Indeed, do I?
Take a
Thank you.